Peace, peace, peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swain, L-A-K-A, the Orthodox one. Wishing y'all peace and blessings. Hoping y'all have a good one, or having a good one out there. Hopefully this works better than the last time. The last time my internet was not working too well for me. This time I downloaded the video. Will be playing it from my computer versus trying to play it online. So hopefully this will work out better. Um, First and foremost, shout out to Vocab Malone and Judah Natzarah for having a fantastic debate. I thought it was a really interesting debate. I thought some interesting points were brought out, um, and I don't think a lot of people wade through the nuances of a lot of these arguments that are being made in terms of Isaiah 53, in terms of eschatology and Israelites and the nations, etc. And something I like to do here is slow things down. Y'all already know what it is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play the debate in its entirety. I'm not going to pause through the debate. Um, I'm not going to give my commentary during the debate. I'm going to do all that afterwards. As a debater, I don't like. I personally don't like it when I see people pause through and give commentary through the debates because you kind of miss the flow of the debate. Um, so for people who have not seen the debate, I'm gonna let it play one good time, and then I'm not going to get into the Q&A, the public Q&A. I'm going to stop it there. If you want that, you can definitely go back to the Gospel Truth channel and watch the full part there. It does get a little spicy between Rabbi Eduardo and Judah Natzarah and whatnot. Shout out to Rabbi Eduardo as well. Um, Shout out to Gospel Truth as a debate platform. Seems like a really solid platform. I'd actually like to debate there at one point, um, God willing. Uh, but with that being said, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to play this debate and get it in here.
Clearly Israel. In one case,
it ain't happening, man. Maybe it's the Italiano in you. You know, you're Italian, so Italians grow beards like crazy. I'm black, so my beard come in a little choppy. So you got to put me on the game, man. You got to help me up, man.
The struggle beard. You got the struggle beard?
Yeah, I got the struggle beard. It don't grow right, man. It don't grow right. But I'm excited. What's that, Vocab?
I was gonna say, at least it grows on your head, right? Oh, my bad. Never mind.
I see Vocab shooting. He's shooting on me. It's all good, man. I look good with a bald head, man. You can't say that. Can't say that for most folks, man. I look good with a bald head. It's all good, man. It's all good.
One day I'll be joining you. Give it time.
No doubt, no doubt. But I'm excited for you guys joining me, man. We're gonna have fun with this topic, man. But before we get into it and go through the format and everything, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourselves to the audience. Tell them what you do. Blogs, YouTube channels, websites, whatever it is. Let them know what you do so they can come check you out, all right? Start with Vocab. Go ahead and give a quick introduction to yourself, Vocab.
Yeah, my name is Vocab. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got into apologetics a couple of decades ago when I started doing more street evangelism. So it's just kind of tied in, doing both things for me. And in the beginning, it was a lot of atheists and a lot of different types of cults like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons. A little bit of Roman Catholicism, and then transitioned pretty heavy into Islam as far as the main area of focus. And then I guess the past, let me see here, the past 8 years now, going on 8 years, mainly dealing with elements of Hebrew Israelism. And so that's what brings me here tonight. Although tonight's debate could be very similar to a discussion that you hear between a Christian and certain strands of people who practice Judaism, there will be some similarity to it. And really, that's the last thing I'll say real quick. Just tonight, yeah, it's a debate, but it's kind of like a Bible study too. You know, we're going to open up the Bible together, look at the scripture, and do our best by God's grace to truly see what it says and then apply it to our lives. So that's what I look forward to tonight. So thanks, Judah, for coming, and thanks, Marlon, for hosting.
No doubt, no doubt. Thank you, Vocab, for coming on and giving a good introduction. All right, Judah, you're up next, man. Go ahead and give a quick introduction to yourself, man.
All right, shalom to everybody, and which means peace. I'm Judah Natzarah from the Torah Knights. We are what people would call a Old Testament. We don't call it that. We call it a Torah-based Israelite group. We also have New Testament people too, as well. We are Vocab labeled us a debate group. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I wouldn't necessarily deny that. But yeah, man, I'm coming to you guys from Tokyo, Japan, and I'm initially from Cleveland, Ohio, and I've been in this Israelite thing for about 30 years. So yeah, it's pretty much it, man. You can find my YouTube channel, Judah Natzarah, or you can find SOJ Devion, which SOJ is Sons of Jacob Torah Knights, and yeah, and other brothers too. I'm sorry, but I can't think of everyone's channel right now, but thank you very much. Yes.
All right. Thank you guys so much for those introductions, man. Remember, folks, go check them out and see what they're about. So we're going to jump into this debate. The premise of this debate is, does Isaiah 53 pertain to Jesus of Nazareth? And so we're going to start that with 1 minute openings, and then we're going to have a number of rebuttal rounds. The first rebuttal round will be 15 minutes each, and then the second rebuttal round will be 10 minutes each. And then we're going to follow that with cross-examination, which will be 10 minutes each for cross-X. And then both of you will have 90 seconds to respond to those questions. The third round of rebuttal will be coming up after that, which will be 8 minutes each. And then we'll have a 20-minute audience Q&A. And both of you will get 90 seconds each to answer questions there. And then after that, we'll have closings for 2 minutes each. All right? Is that good? Is that good?
Oh, yes. I'm gonna share my screen too.
All right, cool. Before you do that, Vocab, make sure this 1 minute, that 1 minute chime will let you know that you have about 1 minute left in your rebuttal round. So that means that you will have, that's the indication, start wrapping your rebuttal up. And also at the 10-second mark of your of your opening, at your 10-second mark, you'll hear that chime as well. All right, at the 10-second mark of your opening. All right. So that's it. You guys have the floor. Vocab, you're up first for your opening. And I understand you're sharing your screen. So let me get you up here. All right, Vocab,
How much
you
time?
have
1 minute opening, right?
Yeah, 1 minute opening. Okay. You have 1 minute.
All right. Yeah, I can share my screen.
Yep, your screen looks good.
Okay, awesome. Is Isaiah 53 about Jesus? That's what we're discussing tonight. And I'm going to say that, yes, Isaiah 53 is about Jesus, Yeshua. In fact, I would argue that it cannot be about anybody else. There's no other real good candidate. It's ultimately, Isaiah 53 means that the Messiah willingly provided payment for sinners. Yeshua died in place of others as a perfect substitute. And I'm going to show tonight a few parallels that are going to be important tonight. I'm going to show Isaiah 53:1 that you have people rejecting the servant's message there. People are going to reject his person. People are going to reject his mission. But his vicarious suffering is going to affect atonement between God and man. He's going to willingly submit to suffering, the person in this passage. We're going to see his death and his burial. And I believe we're going to see hints about him being raised to life, exalted, and richly rewarded. So I hope to show that tonight, and I hope that you will see it tonight, because if it is true, it means that your sin is paid for by a perfect substitute. So tonight's debate, it's not merely academic, it's not random, it's very important. So thank you for being here, everybody. I look forward to a great, lively discussion.
All right. Thank you, Vocab. Appreciate that opening. All right, Judah, you're up next for your 1 minute opening, and I'll start your time. You want to share your screen as well, Judah?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
All right. While I'm sharing my screen, I just want to state for the record that any sensationalism is only due to the debate. It's just slideshow. Do you see it?
Yes, we do.
Wait, why is this? I'm sorry. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. I'm sorry. So Isaiah 53 is what we're going to be speaking about, as Vocab Malone has stated before. My standpoint position is that Isaiah 53 is that it's Israel is the suffering servant who was born, dies, and comes again back to life, and also bore the sins of the Gentiles, not Jesus. Yes, so I'll be showing as Exodus chapter 44 and 22 shows that Israel is the firstborn son. Hosea 11:1, as juxtaposed with the New Testament, which gets Israel out the way and replaces us with Jesus. So I'll be showing in this debate that the suffering servant is the nation of Israel and not Jesus. How do I stop sharing? Wait, where is it? I'm sorry. Stop sharing. I'm sorry. Bear with me.
Okay.
How do I stop sharing?
Yeah, you can. You should be able to click the shares, the share option. It should be able to bring you back to your camera.
Okay.
No, it should. I don't think it's a share there because that's on your PowerPoint, but on the options for vMix, you should be able to see it.
All right. I don't see. Okay, hold on. Bear with me. I'm sorry. I'm still learning this. All right, do you see? Am I good? Did it stop? Hello? Am I
Yeah,
still
you're
back?
good. You're good. Yeah, you're good.
Oh,
Yeah. Your screen is good. You're good to go.
okay.
All right, cool. Thank you, guys. All right, so now we're going to jump into our first rebuttal. And once again, this is going to be a 15-minute rebuttal for each. And so, Vocab.
Rebuttal, it's our opening statement, our opening round. It's not really, I mean, I hear you, but right? Isn't the opening statement round one? Opening. I'm not rebutting what he just said.
All right, yeah, I guess it was a little confusing to me. Okay, so round one would be a 15 minutes opening.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I asked earlier, I said, are they rebuttals? You said, yeah, basically. So that sort of confused me right there. All right, nonetheless. Gotcha. All right, so we're going to go to the 15-minute opening, round one. And Vocab, you have the floor for 15 minutes, man.
All right, awesome. Look forward to tonight's discussion. 15 minutes it is. I'll share my screen again. I'm going to endeavor to show that Isaiah 53, which really starts, of course, in Isaiah 52, should only apply to Messiah, not the nation. And here's some reasons why. Some of these, hopefully, we can get into tonight. Some of them I definitely will get into tonight. One is, I'm going to argue that that's the ancient rabbinical view, that it's an individual in this particular passage. Number two, there's distinctive pronouns that contrast, that show this is an individual, specifically the Messiah. We, us, are versus he, him, his. You're going to see that. Thirdly, you're going to see this is going to be referring to a singular personality. Fourthly, this person dies for my people. That's significant, verse 8. Fifthly, it's voluntarily. It's willing, silent, verse 9 of Isaiah 53. This person is an innocent sufferer. This person provides a substitutionary death. This person brings healing and justification. Number 9, this person dies, but Israel survives. That's a problem for the other position. Number 10, resurrection is needed. Well, it's happened in the case of Yeshua. Now, let's actually look at the passage in front of us, and I'm going to provide some commentary because I believe one of the best things to do in a debate like this, actually, to be honest, is simply to read the passage. Now, obviously, I'm going to be doing more than that, but that's one thing that needs to happen. So here we go. Isaiah 52:13, the beginning of the fourth suffering servant song, or servant song, sometimes called the suffering servant song, says this: behold my servant. Now, if you go throughout Isaiah, it is true. Sometimes the servant is clearly Israel. In one case, the person described, or the servant described, is clearly Isaiah. That's not something that's being denied here tonight. The question is, what about this passage, the suffering servant passage? And the white brackets that I have immediately after that very first term, my servant, they show times in the passages preceding that the servant is described as an individual. And then after that, I have 2 New Testament references, Matthew 12 and Mark 10, where the servant terminology is applied to Jesus himself by himself. So I would argue that he is conscious of this reality, that he indeed is the servant. And of course, in these contexts, he also speaks about his suffering. Behold, my servant shall act wisely. Now, there's a whole thing about Jesus being the wisdom of God and all wisdom being hidden in him. And even those who, I think, were his opponents understood he operated in wisdom. We could cover that if it comes up, but I'm just showing that these traits describe Jesus and no other. He shall be high and lifted up. In John 12, Jesus specifically utilizes that language in regards to himself. Interestingly enough, he does it in reference to the cross. Interesting. He shall be high and lifted up and shall be exalted. Now, I'm going to argue this language, if you look at it in other places in the Old Testament, is not given to just anyone. This language, he shall be high and lifted up, exalted, it is almost exclusively reserved for God himself. Now, shall be exalted, interesting, because you're going to see this person humbled, and yet it says they're going to be exalted. Well, that's exactly what Paul says in Philippians 2:9 about Jesus in relationship to the cross. Isaiah 52:14, as many were astonished at you. His appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind. You got some kind of action where he doesn't look like how he should look. How is that? Why is that? Jesus was beat up. That's a simple answer. Isaiah 52:15. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Now, there may be a discussion about the translation there. That's fine. We can get into that. But the sprinkle terminology is essentially a technical term reserved for priestly activity in relationship to blood. And I have references there. Exodus 29, Leviticus 4:14, and 16. Now, this same language gets applied to Jesus, his high priestly activity in Hebrews 9:12 and 1 Peter 1:2. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Many nations, you can see that mission in Matthew 28:19 and Acts 1:8. Ask yourself, has Israel been successful in this activity? Has she? Kings shall shut their mouths because of him, for that which has not been told them they see, and that which they have not heard they understand. Paul applies this to Jesus in Romans 15:21. And before someone says, well, I don't believe in the New Testament, understand these people writing were first century faithful Hebrews who knew the Old Testament. Isaiah 53:1 continues the song, who has believed what he has heard from us? That is quoted in John 12:37-38 and Romans 10:16. And who is it? I believe this is the faithful remnant of Israel, relaying the message and truth about Messiah, and yet there's a general rejection, which we'll show later. Because who is that? Us. And who are they talking there if it's not that? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Arm of the Lord sometimes is just an anthropomorphic way to describe God's power, his activity, but there are instances where it becomes personalized in biblical theology. And I have the references in white brackets behind there. You can look those up for yourself. And not only does it become personalized, many scholars and indeed folks who studied the Old Testament prior to all these kinds of discussions believe that this is a reference to the Messiah, that type of language, the arm of the Lord. Isaiah 53:2, continuing our passage, you got to pick up this here. He grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. That's important. This is a Davidic reference. Look at Isaiah's own writings in 11:1, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's not just Davidic, it's messianic. That's important because when you see that, you say, well, hold on, how's that going to describe all Israel? Well, it can't. It's describing the Messiah. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. Nothing special. Wasn't all handsome and fly. Isaiah 53:3, he was despised and rejected by men. That's fulfilled in the New Testament Gospels we see, and even to this day. A man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. A man of sorrows. And as of one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. We didn't reckon him to be anything. Isaiah 53:4, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Who's the R in the passage? Who's the our griefs and our sorrows? See, this doesn't work for Israel. Because you have a he carrying ours, see? And this, of course, Matthew applies to Jesus in Matthew 8:17. That literal verse. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. Jesus was viewed as cursed because of the kind of death he died, and it was viewed as his own fault. Isaiah 53:5, but he was pierced, kalal. We can get into that. There's some discussion about the translation, but at the end of the day, you see, this is whatever was done here. If you don't like pierced, whatever was done was for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities, saying the same thing in a different and more intense way. Upon him was a chastisement that brought us peace. So these things that happened to him brought us peace. Fascinating. If it's Israel, that means Gentile nations get peace because they crushed Israel? That don't seem right. And with his wounds, we are healed. Stripes, some translations say. 1 Peter 2:24 says this exact same thing. Isaiah 53:6a says, all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way. 1 Peter 2:25 quotes that verse as well. Isaiah 53:6b, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Paul says that same thing in 2 Corinthians 5:21 about Jesus. Continuing on in verse 7, he was oppressed, he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth, even though he was wrongly convicted. Sorry, I just wanted to make it rhyme. I didn't say that last part. 1 Peter 2:23, like a lamb. Jesus is identified as the lamb by John the Baptist that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shear is silent, so he opened not his mouth. You're going to tell me Israel was silent when she was persecuted? Nah. And there's 4 scriptures I have that show the fulfillment of that in the New Testament. Verse, by oppression and judgment he was taken away, and as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living? This person is dead. And who considered means they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand it. And I have verses for that in the New Testament show the rulers didn't understand what they were doing. Even Jesus saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Stricken for the transgression of my people. Interesting phraseology. Isaiah 53:9, and they made his grave with the wicked and with the rich man in his death. Now, how does that apply to Israel? I know how it applies to Jesus. He died with thieves and was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. Although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth, the verses after show you that. You're going to tell me Israel's never done violence, never had deceit? That doesn't work. Isaiah 53:10, yet it was the will of the Lord. This is an axe. He wanted to do this to crush him. He has put him to grief when his soul, nefesh, makes an offering for guilt. And all the verses are right there on the screen where the New Testament refers to these exact things. So shall he see his offspring. How? He was cut off. Interesting. So he shall prolong his days. How? He was cut off. Hint of the resurrection. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Verse 11, out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. He wants this. He likes this. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant. Notice the righteous one is identified as my servant. That means the servant's a righteous one. Is that Israel? Make many to be accounted righteous. So by what happened to him, there's going to be people who are viewed as in right standing with God. He shall bear their iniquities. Verse 12, therefore, I will divide him a portion with the many. He shall divide the spoil with the strong because he poured out his soul to death and was numbered with the transgressors. This is saying he's going to have victory, people. That's what that's saying there because of what he did. Yet he bore the sin of many and makes intercession for the transgression. Now, this whole discussion, this whole debate is a question of properly interpreting Scripture. I do want to read an at-length quote by Michael Lawrence here, because if you get too confused, I want you to remember this quote or the essence of it here tonight, please. This is a quote, the sources on the screen. If the Bible was a story with God as its author, which I contend it is, but a story whose component parts are text written by people in different languages, cultures, and historical periods, because it is, by the way, how can we be sure that we're reading the story correctly? Is there even such a thing as a correct reading? A lot of people would say there's not these days. In fact, there is such a thing as a correct meaning of a text, precisely because God, who created this world, our brains, and thus our ability to use language, is himself a speaking God. It was God who created rationality and language so that language could accurately convey meaning from one mind to another mind. And he himself proved this not only by acting in history, but also by condescending to use human language to authoritatively explain and interpret his own actions. There is a meaning to a text. Now, it's a specific genre of Scripture called prophecy. So as we look at the diverse genres of Scripture, we've got to look at prophecy. The basic feature, and I'm quoting the sources on the screen, and problem of prophetic interpretation is the promise fulfillment dynamic. This is what divides interpreters. When, where, and how prophecy is fulfilled helps us understand its meaning. And that's exactly what we're discussing tonight. Now, I'm going to go through a few reasons. I only have about 5 minutes left, so I won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to show you a few. I've already covered that. So now I've already covered this. There's the Hebrew text of Isaiah 53. Let's look a little bit about the surrounding context of this so we can understand how we got to Isaiah 52 and Isaiah 53. All right, let's look at this a little bit. It's cutting off here. That's my doing. Let me see. I may not be able to fix that. Maybe I can. Well, okay. It is what it is. It'll be cut off a little bit on the side there. Okay. First, starting at chapter 40 of Isaiah. And the reason why I start there is because when a person reads through the book of Isaiah, it's clear that after chapter 39, there's a marked difference. Yes, we understand there weren't chapters, but that's the way to understand in that part of the book. After 39, there's a transition. Now, I hold that it's still by the one author. I'm not saying it's different authors, but it's almost like part 1 and part 2. And so we're looking at the section here in context, and we see in 40 through 55, all the way back in 40, you see the servant's Lord being described. Then you see the motive for servanthood, which I'm going to say is grace, and I'm using a modified version of a layout. I can give the source. I have everything here to do the layout of the passage here. Then you see servants of the Lord, his witnesses being described, and the verses are on the screen. The Lord delivers his servants, the Lord's testimony. Then you see another transition, the means of servanthood, which is atonement. 49 through 55. Now let's break that down. You have anticipation of reconciliation in 49 through 52. And then now our passage that we come to tonight is revelation. That means God's disclosure of the means of reconciliation. How is this going to happen? How's this going to be brought about? Well, it's by the suffering servant. Now, there's an invitation to reconciliation. And because the other side is cut off, I'm not going to go all the way to chapter 66 because it's not showing up fully on the screen, but you can break down the book to the rest of 66. Now, let's do the layout of just our particular passage tonight here. The fourth servant song. The idea here is to get context and understand what are we looking at? How does it function within the larger book? This divine oracle, here's what happens. You have God evaluating and appraising his servant. You have the nation's lament in 1 through 9. You have the divine oracle given, where God promises to exalt his servant for doing his will. Then you have God speaking, verses 13 through 15. Israel speaking, and by Israel, we understand what we mean by that tonight. Or at least I do. God speaks, verses 10 through 12. And then you have Isaiah interjecting commentary. Now, when we return back, what we're going to do is show the theme of servanthood throughout Scripture. Actually, we can probably get to this now in our last little time here. It's multiple places in the Tanakh, this idea of servanthood, but not just in the Tanakh. And again, verses are on your screen so you can see, and this is not all the places. This is some of the places. It's also in the New Testament. Now, there it gets applied to suffering servant and servants as Jesus's followers to Jesus himself. And how much time do I got left, Marlon?
You have 13 seconds.
All right. I will end there and probably pick up here when we come back next time after I discuss what Judah says. Thank you for your ears and time and attention, everyone. And Isaiah 53 is about Jesus. Can't be about anybody else is the argument. And it's important because it means that the Messiah willingly provided payment for sinners. Yeshua, Jesus, died in place of others as a perfect substitute. And that's exactly what the text says. You heard it read and hopefully explained clearly in your hearing tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vocab, for that. All right, Judah, you're back in the seat. And I was, you go ahead. If you're sharing your screen again, Judah?
Yes, yes.
All right, go ahead, share your screen.
Okay. Bear with me 1 second. Oh,
okay.
Good. Do you see it or no?
Yeah, we see it. We're good to go.
Okay. All right. So I want to show. I know that I'm an Israelite and a Christian. With a huge Christian demographic, it's fine. So you're going to hear some things you've never heard before, and that's okay. I will show that Christians employ what's termed replacement theology. You will notice that Vocab Malone said that you will find that in the book of Isaiah that it speaks about Isaiah, or what do you say? I'm sorry, bear with me. Hold on. He uses he said you will notice that he said you will find this speaking about either Jesus or Isaiah, but he totally left the nation of Israel out as usual. Right? So this is a Christian playbook thing. Also want to state that you do not need to go outside the Torah and the prophets. I'm gonna just say the Torah, which includes the prophets and writings too, so you know. You do not need to go outside the Torah to justify or confirm the Torah. That'd be like me using the Quran to justify. Of course, Christians would never go for that. But I want to say that I will show that Israel is the suffering servant of Yahweh. That's God's real name, not Yahweh, which is a king called Jehu. So when you hear me saying God's name, Yahweh, you can look it up in Arabic. It's the same, Yahweh. On whom falls the sins of the Gentile nations on the basis that Israelites received that which the nations did not, the Torah and the 10 Commandments. This is Psalm 78 and 5. In other words, the Gentiles did not receive the Torah, which means the 10 Commandments and the teachings. The nation of Israel did. So since we have the Torah, right, and the Gentiles do not, their sins fall upon us, which is why the Israelites are on the bottom. And I'm going to show you that the Gentiles, they live in a state of prosperity at this present time. And it's not from the death of Jesus, it's from the death of the Israelites. Isaiah 53 verses 1 through 3, the nation of Israel's history and future. When you're reading Isaiah 53, you're reading about Israel's beginning, its death, and its resurrection. I know it sounds acutely familiar with Christianity. Well, you got to remember which came first, The Torah and the prophets, or the church in Christianity? Exactly. We came first. Who believed our message, and to whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? Christians never consider that it's the nations themselves as a collective during the birth, death, or expelling the exile of Israel, and is resurrecting or returning back to the land. Isaiah 52 verse 13. The servant of Yahweh is Israel, not Jesus. Behold, my servant will prosper. He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted. Just as many were appalled at him, his appearance was disfigured beyond that of any man. His form marred beyond human likeness. And look, verse 15. He will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths because of him, for they will see that which they will see that which has not been told, and understand that which has not been heard. Right. So, in other words, the nations are going to see a nation that they didn't regard as anything, as like a nation that's like afflicted and plagued by God. As you can see, it's the nations looking at Israel. Literally, the debate is over, as the servant's name has been declared, and his testimony matched my testimony, which is Isaiah 8 verse 10, right? The Torah and the 10 Commandments. If they don't have this, they have no light. This is Isaiah 52 verse 4. This is to, like the vocab said, that you have to go back in context. Who's speaking here? So when you see Isaiah 53, he grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of the dry ground. He had no stately form or majesty to attract us, no beauty that we should desire him. It's the nations looking at Israel. As you can confirm this in the previous chapter, Isaiah 52 verse 4. On the day of your birth, your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water for cleansing. You were not rubbed with salt or wrapped in clothes. No one cared enough for you to even do these things out of compassion for you, right? So it just shows you that what? Israel's birth was ignoble, right? So the nations did not see any reason to be like, oh, these are a special people. Deuteronomy 7 verse 7. Yahweh did not set his affection on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. And the word used in what they call Hebrew is the word ma'at, which means insignificant, small, diminutive. Isaiah 53 verse 4. Israel, upon whom all the iniquities fall due to forsaking the Torah of Yahweh. Verse 4. Surely he took our infirmities. This is the nation speaking. Surely he took our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him, the nation of Israel, stricken by God, struck down and afflicted. Our infirmities, griefs, defilement, profanations, common, sick, wounds, making treaty, petitions, disease, pray for. This is the word used in Strong's 24:7, the word kala, but they use it as kalayana in Isaiah 53 verse 4. So it's the nation speaking. Why did the sins fall upon Israel? Psalm 78 verse 5. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the Torah in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children. Deuteronomy 32 verse 46. When Moses had finished reciting all these words to Israel, he said to them, take to heart all these words that I testify among you today, so that you may command your children to carefully follow all the words of this Torah. For it is not an empty thing, for it is your life. The Torah is Israel's life. The other nations weren't given this life, not until they come up under Israel. Isaiah 53 verse 4. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. That punishment that brought us peace was upon him. And by his stripes we are healed. The nation of Israel is getting their backsides kicked in. The nation of Israel is the one that died. We're going to show you through scripture. Israel bears the profanations or the defilements or pollutions of the nations. Isaiah 43 verse 28. I have profaned the holy princes. I handed over Jacob to blasphemies. You're going to see the Israelites are Jesus. Strange, right? Because our story sounds like the Christian story. Yeah, well, let's keep it going. Notice it said the holy princes, not Jesus, princes in plural, the holy ones. The Gentile sins fall upon the Israelites. For the ruling nations to be up, Israel must be down. Psalm 73 is going to show you about the Gentile nations, in particular, the world ruling nations. And Israel says, for I've envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They have no struggle in their death. Their bodies are well fed. The psalmist, as Israel, envied the nations who are wicked and prosper without keeping the Torah, while the Israelites have to suffer. So this is clearly not talking about Jesus. This is talking about the nation of Israel. But the wicked, they prosper. Job 21:7. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power? The answer, because Yahweh did not choose the nations for the Torah, but the Israelites. When we don't keep it, and we don't, we live in moral, spiritual, and intellectual decay. Psalm 37 verses 1 through 7. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be you envious or jealous against the workers of iniquity. Right? Why? Because the Gentiles, they're doing great. You can see here, you can see Donald Trump, and they're all here, and there's a Christian church, and it looks like money to me. Well, we live in the ghettos, and we get shot by police. As you can see here, there's a little old lady here giving her money to the Christian church. Isaiah 42, verse 22. But it is a looted and downtrodden people, not a single guy, people. This Isaiah 53, the book of Isaiah tells you who the servant is. Isaiah 53, verses 5 through 7. The nations speak on how their sins fall on Israel. Yahweh does not punish the Gentiles. Isaiah 53 and 6. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each one has turned his own way, and Yahweh has laid upon him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth, and he was led like a lamb to a slaughter, right? Psalm 73, verse 11. The wicked, who are the ruling Gentile nations, say, how can God know? Does the Most High have knowledge? Behold, these are the wicked, always carefree as they increase in their wealth. Surely in vain I've kept my heart pure. In innocence I've washed my hands. And this person's saying, yo, I kept the Torah, but like, wait a minute, like these guys ain't keeping the Torah. They're doing great. You know why? Because for their success depends on all failure, the Israelites' failure. Psalm 73, verse 13. Surely in vain I've kept my heart pure. In innocence I have washed my hands, for I am afflicted all day long and punished every morning. If I had said, I will speak this way, then I would have betrayed your children. In other words, if Israelites knew why the wicked world ruling nations succeed or prosper, they would rebel. They would say, what need I have I to keep the Torah if the wicked, the Gentile nations don't have to keep it and they're succeeding? Isaiah 53, verse 9, the righteous remnant. This is what they never speak about, the righteous remnant in Israel, right? This is the righteous remnant comes during Ezekiel 38 and 39 times, right? And Gog and Magog, right? Zechariah 14. And they made his grave, talking about the nation of Israel, with the wicked. As we can clearly see, Israel gets kicked out of the land, we live in exile, and we're buried among Gentile people in their lands. Then they made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Who are the wicked? Equals the hammer of Yahweh to punish his people. Psalm 17, verses 12 through 13. Like a greedy lion for prey, like a young lion lurking in the ambush. Arise, O Yahweh, confront them, bring them to their knees. Deliver me from the wicked by your sword, which should be, who is your sword? From such men, O Yahweh, by your hand, from the men of the world whose portion is in this life. So clearly the wicked are the world ruling nations. These are the ones who are speaking in Isaiah 53. They can't believe that the people they used to oppress are suddenly going to be raised up and high. Isaiah 53 and 9, the righteous remnant, the generation that gets released with no deceit in his mouth. Zechariah 13, verse 9, the third I will put into a fire. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. Not him, them. They, not him, they will call on my name and I will answer them. And I will say, these are my people. And they will say, Yahweh is our God. Zechariah 10, verse 6, and I will strengthen the house of Judah and I will save the house of Joseph. And I will bring them again to place them. For I will have mercy upon them, and this shall be as though I had never cast them off. For I am Yahweh their God, and will hear them. Zechariah 8 and 8. And I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. Now, when this happens, there is an event that happens called Gog and Magog, right? But that generation didn't do any sin, but still has to go through this time called Gog and Magog when we return back to the land. Isaiah 53 and 10, the Israelites repent of their sin and eventually become a nation by Yahweh's name. Yet it was Yahweh's will to crush him and to cause him to suffer when his soul is made a guilt offering, which is Hashem, which means guilty, a confession of guilt. If Jesus is guilty, he cannot be a perfect sacrifice. He will see his offspring, he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of Yahweh will prosper in his hand. Hosea 5 verse 15 will confirm Isaiah 53 and 10 about this servant who will put his soul up as an offering for guilt. Then I will return to my place until they admit their guilt, their Hashem, and seek my face. And their affliction, they will earnestly seek me. Hosea 6 verse 1 and 2. Israel is struck, dies, and rise again after 3 days, not Jesus. Come, let us return to Yahweh, for he has torn us to pieces, but he will heal us. He has wounded us, but he will bind up our wounds. After 2 days, he will revive us, not Jesus. On the third day, he will raise us, not Jesus, that we may live in his presence. So again, they take you out, put Jesus in. It's called replacement theology. The Torah tells you this would happen in a book of Deuteronomy. Israelites are the stricken ones whom Israelites are stricken sons of Yahweh who take on the sins of the world. We just read it. Watch this. Ezekiel 37 verse 10 and 11. Israel is the one that died, not Jesus. We are Jesus, the suffering servant, the dying, resurrecting son of Yahweh. So I prophesied, this is Ezekiel 37, verse 10 and 11. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath entered them, and they came to life and stood on their feet, a vast army. Then he said to me, Son of man, these are the bones of the whole house of Israel. Look, they, not Jesus, are saying, not him, our bones are dried up, and not him, our hope has perished. We, not I or him, we are cut off. Isaiah 53 verse 11 will confirm that Israel is the suffering servant that comes back to life. After the anguish of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Why? Because he was given the Torah. Israelites are the stricken sons of Yahweh who take on the sins of the world. We just read it. Watch this, Isaiah 2 and 2. All nations will stream to the Israelites instead of despising them. In the last days, the mountain of the temple of Yahweh will be established as the chief of the mountains. It will be raised above the hills, and all nations, not all nations stream into Christianity, all nations will stream to the Israelites when we are in the kingdom. All nations will stream to it. Isaiah 57 verse 17. For the iniquity of his covetousness, I was angry and I struck him. Him who? Israel. I hid and was angry. This ain't talking about Jesus. He went on backsliding in the way of his heart. I have seen their ways, but I will heal them. I will guide them and restore comfort to Israel's mourners. Israel's mourners? Someone's mourning Israel. Why would they mourn Israel? Because he was struck. He died. We're in exile. Isaiah 53 verse 12. The righteous remnant will blossom in the land and increase and teach the world the Torah. Therefore, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he has poured out his life unto death and was numbered among the transgressors, the Gentiles. Yet he bore the sin of many and made intercession for transgressors. You saw that Israel was born, sinned, and died, and was resurrected. And a small remnant will be called the people of Yahweh. We just read this in Zechariah. All right. Sorry. You know what? I'm going to stop right there. Just to show that, yes, it is Israel that was born ignoble, died, and was, exiled, and shall be returned back again, quote unquote, resurrected, and that the Christian story is based off the life, death of Israel, or Christian. I'm sorry. Yeah. With that, I'm out. Shalom. Let me stop sharing.
All right, Coach Judah, that was the 1 minute mark, so you have 30 seconds. So you good with that?
I'll just stop. Yes. Yeah. We're good. 30 seconds. Yeah, so as you all see that you can say, well, hey, that Christian story sounds very, very familiar with the Israelite story, and this is probably something you'd never heard before. But take in consideration what the Scripture says. We don't need to go into the New Testament. The book of Isaiah and the prophets and the Torah tell you who the suffering servant of Yahweh is. It's the nation of Israel. And with that, all praises to Yahweh God in His holy name, and shout out to the Israelites. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that opening. All right, Vocab, you're back up in the seat, and you have 10 minutes this round. All right. So I'll start your time as soon as you begin to speak.
Sure. 10 minutes. And we're starting now.
All right. I want to read a quote that is important. It sets everything in context here to help us to understand about who this suffering servant is in this song we are reading. Here's the quote from the book on the screen. Within Isaiah 40 through 48, there's no doubt that Israel is the servant of the Lord. So notice Judah mistakenly said, I didn't call Israel the servant of the Lord, yet I literally have screens prepared to do that exact thing. And I mentioned it in my opening statement. I guess you just didn't hear. That's okay. Like Adam, Israel was created and formed to serve the Lord and mediating God's presence to the nations. So Judah did bring that up, and that's not entirely wrong as far as what Israel was supposed to do. But did she? In fulfillment of God's covenant promises to Abraham, they were to be a blessing to the nations. With the descent of David on their throne, Israel the servant was to magnify the incomparable name of Yahweh as the one true God who both creates and redeems. Yet they failed spectacularly, becoming almost indistinguishable from the idolatrous nations. What would Yahweh do? Here's the answer. The answer is raise up a new servant. And that's the branch. And in a second, I'm going to take off screen share. I'm going to read from Isaiah 11 and show you that's who it's talking about. Now, there's a great debate, probably the best debate on this subject, between Rabbi Shmuley Botiek and Michael Brown. And they go over some amazing points. I encourage you to watch this. Happened back in 2007. It's on YouTube. A couple points I want to bring out that Dr. Brown brought out. In Isaiah 40 through 15, you see the word servant, Ebed, 17 times. It is sometimes collectively, meaning Israel. I mean, again, this is in my notes. I had this. Sometimes it clearly is Israel just collectively. Sometimes it's an individual versus on the screen. Sometimes it's debated about what it is, such as Isaiah 42:1. No doubt about that. But overall, the collective references stop by 48:20. And by the time you get to 52:13, you clearly have a righteous individual in mind. Now, I want to show you something from Isaiah 11, which is very important, because remember that branch language, that kind of plant language, that root language that's used in Isaiah 52 and 53? Well, let's see what it's referring to. It's the righteous reign of the branch in Isaiah 11, his own book. Here it goes. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse. So this is not all Israel, because not all Israel is Judah, and not all Israel is in the line of Jesse. This is someone in particular. This is who it's referring to. And a branch from his roots shall bear fruit, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. That sounds like the anointed one. When you talk about a spirit, when you talk about the Spirit of the Lord resting upon one, that's anointed one language. That's Mashiach language. The spirit of wisdom and understanding. Notice the servant of the Lord acts wisely. Remember how our passage began? The spirit of knowledge. Skip one. The spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide disputes by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity the meek of the earth. Now that's important, because Israel is accused of doing the opposite thing, and in fact of being blind and deaf herself. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's what this person's going to do? This sounds like godlike activity. Now look at this. Look at this. This is Isaiah 11 describing this person. With the breath of his lips, he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his loins. That's a beautiful thing. And then you get into really strange language when you start getting into verse 6 that somehow ties into this righteous branch, because it describes his reign. And you have a peaceful kingdom there. Now, that goes beyond sort of the discussion we're having here today, but I just want to bring that out, because that is really a way to make sure you understand what Isaiah is doing when he uses the branch language there. It's specific to the Messiah. Now, Isaiah 53 is not about the nation of Israel. Let me try to. There we go. Okay, there we go. I got the right thing now. And I want to show a couple reasons why. One is, when you look at the ancient rabbinical opinion, that was not their opinion. Not until the 10th century with Rashi did we have that becoming the predominant opinion of people that Judah would say are his ancestors. So their opinion should matter, shouldn't it? Now, it's not that the opinion that it was collectively Israel or righteous remnant never existed, but as far as the prominence and almost essentially being an official interpretation, it wasn't until the 10th century with Rashi. Remember, as I brought up in the beginning, you have distinctive pronouns. Pay attention to the pronouns in the passage we're talking about. We, us, are versus he, him, his. You have a singular personality. He dies for my people. How can he die for my people if it's my people dying? He's voluntarily, willingly, silently suffering. That doesn't sound like the affliction of Israel, does it, people? No, it doesn't. He's an innocent sufferer. Was Israel innocent? In a second here, I'm going to show you a verse that's going to show the answer to that is no. It's a substitutionary death. Now, why would the Gentiles get to have their sins paid for when they're the ones inflicting Israel? That doesn't make sense. Healing and justification he brings. And remember, Israel survives, doesn't die, despite Judah's attempt to use Hosea 6 in that way. On his screen, it said Hosea 16, but everyone should know it is Hosea 6. Resurrection is needed. Now, I want to show you something here briefly again. And my screen here, let me see if it'll show it. If I just switch this just a second, I'm switching over to... How does this work? Am I going to be able to do it? I'm going to have to read this to you, because I'm having trouble bringing this other thing, because it's from a different source. It's from my Bible app here. But it's from Ezekiel 39. I encourage everyone to look to Ezekiel 39. And I'm going to read Ezekiel 39 to you, starting in verse 22. And what this is going to prove definitively, and, I don't like to do this, but I could. But Judah's my friend, so I won't. But I could say, after I read this, the debate is over. But I won't do that. Here's Ezekiel 39. Listen to what it says, starting in verse 22. The house of Israel shall know that I am the Lord their God from that day forward. Now listen to this. That's what Israel's going to know. What are the nations going to know? Verse 23. This is Ezekiel 39. And the nations shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they dealt so treacherously with me that I hid my face from them and gave them into the hand of their adversaries, and they all fell by the sword. I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their transgressions and hid my face from them. They're not paying for the sins of the nations. They are paying for their own sins. This is definitive, people. Continuing on to show you that Israel is not the suffering servant in this passage we're looking at. I'm not saying Israel's never referred to as a suffering servant in Isaiah, because that's a foolish position. But she fails. And so the Lord raises up a new servant out of Jesse's line. 53:8, for the transgressions of my people he was stricken. This is not a plurality or a collective noun. Let me ask you a question. What people was Isaiah a part of? If the people of Israel was the servant of the Lord here, who would be my people? You get this first person plural pronoun 10 times in verses 4 through 6. It is not the nation. Even the rabbis knew this until the 10th century when they got convinced otherwise. Maimonides, Rabbi Crispin, they all thought it was wrong to apply Isaiah 53 to Israel. And you can get this in a book that is available publicly, 1887, because it's out of copyright. The sources on the bottom, the Messianic Prophecies, very scholarly book, very good book. And the father of modern Hebrew, Gessensis, look what he says. It was only the latter Jews who abandoned this messianic interpretation, no doubt in consequence of their controversies with the Christians. And there are some rabbis who have come forward since then and admitted it. Now, I'm going to read from a book by Dr. Louis Goldberg called God, Torah, and Messiah. And he raises a great point in relationship to this idea about Israel being the one described in this passage. Quote, the plain sense of the biblical text, where sufferings and glories are ascribed to one and the same person, suppose it is granted that the one mentioned in 53:10 is the nation. Sacrifices, however, must be perfect, without spot or blemish. Yet the same prophet who is supposed to be describing the suffering of the nation confesses that Israel is sick. Well, where does that happen at? Is that correct? Is that accurate? Is he just saying that? I mean, come on now. Well, Isaiah 1:6. Can I look at you for a second and read this? I would like to do that if I could. Here we go. Isaiah 1:6 says this, from the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, but bruises and sores and raw wounds. They are not pressed out or bound up or softened with oil. Your country lies desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. And it goes on and on. It's literally describing Israel as being sick. Now, how is Israel going to heal when it's the one who needs the healing? This is important because Israel not healing herself. She's blind. Isaiah 42:19. Isaiah 42:6-7. Compare those. How's she going to open the eyes when she herself is blind? She's deaf according to 42:20, yet she's called to proclaim. She's in prison, unresponsive, unjust, and unrebellious. She's not the servant in this passage. All right.
All right.
Is that the end?
That's it. That's it.
Hey,
Thank you,
Google, turn
Vocab. Thank you, Vocab, for that. All right, Judah, you're back in the seat once again, man. And you have 10 minutes, and I will start your time as soon as you begin to speak. Think you may be muted, Judah. Think you may be muted.
I'm sorry. Mic check. Mic check.
Yep, you're loud and clear.
Okay. I was trying to share the screen. If you guys can see it.
Yes, we can. We got you.
All right, so I jotted down Vocab's rebuttals, but due to the shortness of time, I'm going to continue on with my slides. We do have a Q&A, so don't worry. Again, you guys have seen the replacement theology in full effect tonight. You clearly seen that Vocab also has capitulated and acquiesced to my position that it is Israel, that we are the suffering servant. He has acquiesced to and agreed to as well. Isaiah 44, verse 1. But now listen, O Jacob, my servant Israel, whom I have chosen, not Jesus. This is the word of Yahweh, your maker, who formed you from the womb and who will help you. Do not be afraid, O Jacob, my servant, Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. Now, clearly, Vocab should make it seem like the Most High is totally just got rid of Israel forever. And we clearly see that's not the case. It's not. Like, this is in the future. This isn't happening now. So whatever's going on now is going to go away. Isaiah 43 verse 10, you are my witnesses, declares Yahweh. My witnesses, plural, and my servant, singular, whom I have chosen, so that you may consider and believe me and understand that I am he, and before me no God was formed, and after me none will come. Yes, I am Yahweh, and there is no savior besides me. As much as Christians like to insert Jesus in there, clearly Yahweh said, well, there's no savior besides me, and my name is Yahweh, not Jesus. Right? And you are my witnesses, plural, not singular. Isaiah 41 verse 8, but you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, you descendants of Abraham, my friend. Clearly, there's no, come on. We got to stop the replacement theology. Israel, the suffering servant, will make many righteous. Because Vocab Malone tried to make it, take Israel out, put Jesus in. Isaiah 51 verse 7, listen to me, you who know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my Torah. Fear not the reproach of man, nor be dismayed at their revilings, because they'll say, the Torah's done away with. We have a new. And by the way, there's no Jesse or root of Jesse in Isaiah 53. Jeremiah 31 verse 34. But this shall be the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel, not Jesus. After those days, says Yahweh, I will put my Torah in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. Not my only begotten son, my people. Isaiah 43 verse 28, therefore I have profaned the princes of the sanctuary and have given Jacob to the curse and Israel to blasphemy. How is that? Because we're the people. And as you see Vocab Malone try to get me to, with the rabbis or whatever, those are not Israelites. Those guys practice a religion called Judaism, which is not in the Torah and prophets either. Right? So we can't really rely on them. They're not the people. They're not going through what the Torah is saying the Israelites are going through. We're going through it. When you hear the crazy words and names being called, and the other people are replacing you, and you are no longer relevant and not important to God, that's blasphemy, because it clearly says here that the Most High is going to turn his face to us once again. Israel pays for the Gentiles the wicked sins and will pray for them. Isaiah 53 verse 12, for he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. How? We established, the Torah was given to Israel only. Psalm 78 verse 5, he decreed statutes for Jacob and established the Torah in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach their children. That the Gentiles' pollutions fall upon Israel because of this fact, especially the world ruling empires, which are called the wicked, right? Psalm 109 verse 2 and 4, for wicked and deceitful mouths are opened against me, speaking against me with a lying tongue. They surround me with hateful words and attack me without cause. In return for my love, they accuse me, but I am a man of prayer. They repay me evil for good and hatred for my love. Everyone knows the Israelites everywhere are the most kind and gentle people to everybody else but themselves. Everyone knows that, right? Everyone. We prayed for the people that hanged us for trees. Shoot, we see police shooting people and the mothers forgiving them. Why? Because we are always praying for people, but not ourselves, right? We have thoroughly concluded that Israel is a servant of Isaiah 53. He is the Jesus, Son of God. Hosea 14 and 10. Who is wise and who will understand these things? Who is understanding and will know them? For the ways of Yahweh are straight, and the righteous will walk in them, and the sinners will stumble. If you're confused as to when Yahweh says Israel, 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 and in your mind you think that it says Jesus, you're going to stumble on the commandments. You're going to stumble in the book of life, Yahweh. Hosea 6 verse 1. Come, let us return to Yahweh. He has torn us to pieces, but he will heal us. He has injured us, but he will bind up our wounds. And after 2 days, he will revive us on the third day. He will raise us up that we may live in his sight. He will raise us up. You mean like my servant should be lifted up? He should be very lofty? Yeah. It's talking about Israel, not Jesus. Of course, Vocab Malone's not going to address that. He's my friend, but he's not going to address that. Isaiah 42 verse 24. For they would not walk in his ways. This is Israelites. Neither were obedient to his Torah. They were enveloped in flames, but they still refuse to understand. So you clearly see here, whether you say these guys are Christians or not, you clearly see here a cross burning. Why? Because you are the Jesus. That's why you're blasphemed. You're the Holy Prince. They have you and they set you on fire. Did they not put these in your yard? And what is this telling you? You're Jesus. You're the one that was hanging from the trees. Is anyone going to deny that? You were hanging from the trees and they were burning crosses. You're Jesus. The scriptures told you. Now, of course, you go to the New Testament, it's not going to tell you that. But in the Torah and prophets, your heritage, you'll see. Isaiah 42, verse 18. Who is as blind as my servant? Who is blind but my servant, or is deaf like the messenger who I'm sending? Who is blind like my covenant partner? It's actually the Mashal. Or blind like the servant of Yahweh. The Israelite does not even consider that they're the suffering servant because he's blind and deaf. The same servant in chapter 53 is the same servant throughout the book of Isaiah, Israel. Israel is also that Jesus Christ of the Gentiles. I proved it through this scripture. Israel is the only one named to die and come back to life in 3 days. That's Hosea 6, verse 1. Israel's the one told, not Jesus Christ. Israelites, from stricken ones to the rulers of the earth. Isaiah 60, verse 10. For foreigners will rebuild your walls, and their kings, you know those nations speaking in Isaiah 53? Their kings will serve you. Although I struck you, not Jesus, in anger, yet in favor I will show you mercy. And that does not mean going through Christianity to find Jesus. It means you have to keep the Torah where you will find Yahweh and he will show you mercy. Right? Oh, okay. And with that, oh, wait. How much time do I have left? I'm sorry.
Yeah, about 3 minutes left.
Cool. Okay. That's all I need. Thank you very, very much. Can you see my screen, please? Or can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Vocab Malone, he keeps refraining to speak about the Isaiah 53 as a timeline of Israel's life or birth, life, death, and resurrection, or what do you call it? Recollection or gathering back to the land. This is Zechariah chapter 13, verse 9. This third, matter of fact, I'm sorry. Let me back this up one verse back. All right, sorry. Oh, come on. This is Zechariah verse 13, Zechariah 13 and 8. In the whole land declares Yahweh, 2/3 will be struck down and perish, yet 1/3 will be left. Wait a minute. This is when Israel returns back to the land, right? When Israel returns back to the land, the Most High is going to do one more sifting and get rid of the 2/3, and there's going to be 1/3 left. This third I will put into fire, and I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them, and I will say, they are my people, and they will say, Yahweh is our God. No, this is in the land. This is the righteous remnant. This is one that will blossom and bloom. Right? This is the he shall see his seed and be satisfied and divide the portions with the mighty. And I think it's Isaiah 53 verse 10. This is talking about Israel. Real quick, let me just get this real quick. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry. I should have had this prepared. Bear with me. 45, 40. I'm sorry. How much time I have? I might just stop here.
Yeah, you have 1 minute left.
All right. Let me just stop there. All right. Let me get off of this. Okay. So just to get off of that, as you clearly see again, that it is Israel is the servant of Yahweh. He's the one that lived, ignoble, died, and will be resurrected or regathered back to the land. When we are outside the land, we are known as dead people. You can find this in Ezekiel chapter 37, the valley of dry bones. With that, all praises to Yahweh God, and I'm going to stop right there.
All right, cool. Thank you guys for that. And so now we're going to transition to our cross-examination. This will be a total of 20 minutes, 10 minutes each for each of you to lead with questions. And in that, you guys have 90 seconds to respond to those questions. Before we start, audience, let's get some questions in, because right after the cross X, we're going to have an 8-minute round 3, and then we're going to have a 20-minute question Q&A. And so you guys get those questions in, and we're going to tackle that. With that said, Vocab, you have 10 minutes. Do you guys want to take a break real quick, or you guys want to go right into it? Are you guys good?
I don't need to take a break.
What was that, Judah? All right, you good to go?
Let's go.
All right. You guys have the floor, and Vocab, you have it for 10 minutes, and I'll start your time as soon as you ask your first question.
All right, sure. Judah, Ezekiel 39, 23 to 24 says that Israel went into captivity for her iniquity and transgressions, for hers. So why do you say that she's suffering for Gentiles' iniquity and transgressions?
Because Israel was given the Torah and the Gentiles weren't.
That's true, and yet she transgressed the Torah, didn't she?
Not everyone.
Ezekiel 39 says Israel went into captivity for her iniquity.
Okay, I understand that. Yes, as a whole, but not everybody transgressed.
Well, this says Israel went into captivity. Even the prophet Isaiah identified himself as a man of unclean lips, didn't he?
Yes.
Right. So not even the supposed righteous of Israel can be identified as without blemish. Can they?
About as much as Jesus getting whipped, yeah.
That doesn't make sense, but let's move on a similar note to that. Isaiah 1:6 describes Israel as sick. Isaiah 42:19 says Israel is blind. Isaiah 42:20 says Israel is deaf. Isaiah 42:22 says she's imprisoned. 42:25 she's unresponsive. She's described multiple places as unjust. She's described in 51 as rebellious. So Israel clearly is not the servant, because a servant is the opposite of these things, and he's healing the sick. He's hearing the voice of the Lord. He's proclaiming, he's liberating. So why do you say it's Israel and Israel is sick and all these other things I just listed just now in the debate? How can this be Israel in 52 and 53?
Okay, so again, Isaiah 53 is talking about a birth, a life, death, and a restoration of Israel, not talking about a man. And Israel was given the Torah, which the Gentiles were not. So the fact that the Gentiles was not given the Torah, which could atone for their sins, and Israel was, that means that their sins automatically fall upon Israel, because they don't have to necessarily, they don't have anything to necessarily repent by. That's why in the later days they have to come up under Israel to serve Yahweh.
So Judah, how are you answering the question about Israel being sick, deaf, blind, imprisoned, unresponsive by your answer? I mean, with all due respect, you just danced right around the question. You didn't deal with anything about how the sick is supposed to heal the sick.
Okay, again, so the answer to that is you're missing the point of Isaiah 53. That is a timeline. I know you want to put it just in one place, and it's Isaiah 53 is talking about the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story of Israel. That's how.
Okay. Few reasons why that doesn't make sense, but let's go to 53:2 specifically. It says he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. Now, that's what Isaiah 53:2 says. Now, Isaiah 11, so we're in the same book now, says this: there shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit. So why aren't you identifying Isaiah 53:2 with the righteous branch of Isaiah 11:1? Why are you saying it has nothing to do with the line of Jesse?
Because the line of Jesse is never mentioned in Isaiah 53. You added that in there.
Okay. We're looking at the whole book of Isaiah. I'm not going to another book. I'm going earlier in the same book. So in Isaiah 53:2, it says he grew up before him like a young plant. Keep that in mind. Isaiah 11:1 says there shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse. Then Isaiah 53:2, the next line says, and like a root out of dry ground. Isaiah 11:1, the next part says, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit. You're not seeing that Isaiah 53:2 is identifying the servant as the righteous branch, one and the same. That's not clear to you? You think I'm adding it?
No, yes, you definitely added that. The word is a sapling, like a young tender branch. It's a sapling, not an actual like a Natzarah, which is a branch, a monarchy. So yes, you did kind of add that in there. I'm sorry, what was part of your second question?
Just that he's clearly developing a theme of the branch, and this is why it makes it actually rather easy to identify Isaiah 53 as a messianic passage. Do you believe that Isaiah 53 is even a messianic passage at all?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. That's unfortunate for very many reasons. Now, I want to show you something from just Isaiah 53:5 alone. Isaiah 53:5. If you're able to look at it in real quick, I'm not going to ask you to read it. I just want to make sure you're there so you can compare the pronouns I'm going to ask you about in a second. And same thing for the audience if you're able to look at it. So here we are, Isaiah 53:5. And I'm going to read these various comparisons from this because this shows that the suffering servant is suffering in our place. So I'm actually going to show the screen for this if I could. Okay, I know you're not going to be able to see it all because it's the way it is, but on the left it says he is pierced, and then on the right from the same verse it says for our transgressions. So notice the pronouns, Judah. He, are. On the left side, he is crushed. That's daka. For our iniquities, he, are. Upon him, that's him. Personal pronoun, masculine. The chastisement of our peace. Him, are. His wounds, his. On the other side, corresponding, we are healed, Rapha. His, we. Now, this is an individual being contraposed or juxtaposed with a collective noun. How then can it be Israel when you have he, are, him, are, his, we? How is it Israel? Because Israel is clearly the are and the we in the passage. Is she not? Or if you want to use the phrase God's people. You don't see Isaiah 53:5, the contrast between the collective and individual pronouns there. Well, how do you interpret this then?
Well, I'll interpret it just like in the I think it's like Isaiah 42. It speaks of you are my. I'm sorry. Isaiah 42. I think it's like you are my witnesses, plural, and then it says my servant, singular. To answer your question, so when it's talking about us, is referring to us individually as like a woman, or as a young man, or as a man, or as a profane prince, and as a single person talking about us all.
So you believe that it should be translated or understood like this, Judah? We are pierced for our transgressions. We are crushed for our iniquities. Upon us is the chastisement of our peace. Our wounds we are healed. You think that's what it's actually saying?
No, that's the Gentiles talking.
But that's
52 shows you.
But that's
Yeah,
literally
know,
the
but
way you're trying to interpret Isaiah 53:5 is what I just said. It seems like you didn't like it when you heard it. But tell me where I'm wrong.
No, you're wrong, because in Isaiah 52, it starts talking about the Most High giving redemption and sight of the nations. Then the nations begin to speak in Isaiah 53. They're like, they can't believe, like, wait a minute, these people? Like, we thought these people were stricken by God. That's why they're on the bottom. And
Okay.
their success depends on our failure. That's what you're making it about a single, and the book of Isaiah keeps talking about Israel.
So you're making it that it's Israel's sufferings. Isaiah 53:9 says that the sufferer who suffers here does so voluntarily, willingly, and silently. When did Israel suffer voluntarily, willingly, and silently, Judah?
And the generations that had to pay for it, like, I'll give you an example. When we arrived in America, we weren't necessarily like doing anything necessarily wrong. We didn't know whether to keep the Torah or whatever we were doing when we got here. But yet and still, we were still, what was going on in the early history in America. So you can say, like, well, wait a minute, they didn't do anything wrong. Why did that happen to them?
Okay, if you're going to make the correlation there between, I thought you were done. Between Black Americans and Israelites, willing, these people were kidnapped voluntarily. They didn't say, I want to go to America as a slave. Silently. I mean, I think I remember a couple slave rebellions, and I think I even remember spiritual songs that talked about freedom. I don't know what you are talking about, frankly, to try to say that the sufferer here is Israel, who's willingly, voluntarily, silently suffering. And the last thing is this. If the Gentiles are the ones punishing Israel in the passage, how is it fair or just that their sins are paid for by them being the ones who are punishing Israel? How is that righteous?
Can you ask your question one more time? The last part.
If the Gentiles are the ones punishing Israel, they're the ones doing these actions to Israel as the collective suffering servant. How is it righteous of God to say, and by the Gentiles punishing you, they get their sins paid for?
That's how it works. The Most High said, I use the wicked as my hammer. Surely you won't disagree with that. And he uses his hammer to what? His instruction rod to what? Chastise his people.
Great point.
So he uses the Gentile to chastise
Assyria,
his people.
Babylon, Persia, did they have their sins paid for, or were they destroyed as empires?
All Gentile nations their sins fall not paid for, their sins fall upon Israel. So
All
we
right,
get
all right.
polluted.
Okay.
All right. That's time. All right, Judah, you're up next for your 10-minute cross-ex vocab, and I'll start your time. You begin to ask your first question.
All right. According to Ezekiel 44:3, this is the royal Messiah in the future in the kingdom. It says, the prince himself is the only one who may sit inside the gateway to eat in the presence of Yahweh. He is to enter by the way of the porch of the gateway and go out the same way. Does in Ezekiel 44 verse 3 and 4, the royal Messiah is eating food put together by the Levites. If Jesus is the Messiah, why is he eating human food?
Jesus.
Or I'm sorry, if he's God. My bad. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. If Jesus is God, why is he eating human food in Ezekiel 44 verse 4?
Interesting question. Of course, the top of the debate's not is Jesus God, but I'll gladly answer it nonetheless. In the scripture themselves, Jesus is portrayed as eating food. In fact, even after his resurrection, he eats some fish. So Jesus was always eating. In fact, he was eating so much, they said, hey, this Son of Man guy is a party animal, hanging out with sinners and getting drunk and eating. Now, I'm not saying he was doing that, but that's what he's accused of. And the reason why, Judah, is because you're right, he's God, but he's not only God. He's not mere man, but he's also not anything different than a human would be who's a sinless human, meaning he subjected himself to the fact of being human, the realities that come along with it, including sleep. You see Jesus sleeping in a boat because he needed to sleep, because he was tired, because he had a human body that he willingly took on, according to Philippians 2. So Jesus definitely ate food. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a sin.
That wasn't the question, sir. But let me rephrase the question. Why is Jesus eating food prepared by Levitical priest if he's the perfect sacrifice? Maybe I should have started off with that. In Ezekiel 44 verse 5.
So I'm having trouble understanding.
No, that's not him, but you're saying it's him. So see, why is he eating food prepared by Levitical priest if he's the perfect sacrifice? What would he need to do that for?
I'm not understanding the significance of the problem. So you got to help me out. I thought I answered the question, but you're saying I didn't.
No, you didn't. You're saying that Jesus was the perfect sacrifice and that Isaiah 53 is talking about Jesus. So I'm asking you, why is Jesus, according to you, who's supposed to be the royal Messiah, why is he here in the future eating sacrifices prepared by Levitic priest in Ezekiel 44 and 5?
Well, I mean, I'd have to look at this entire passage. It's not like I studied in depth Ezekiel 44 before the debate on Isaiah 53. But nonetheless, you have the angel of the Lord, even in the Old Testament, where there's a theophany, that apparently eats meals with people as well. And so this is not a problem for God when he takes on an embodied form, even in the Old Testament, which is a temporary activity with the angel of the Lord, such as the situation with Abraham, I believe, and then the situation with, I think, Samson's parents or something like that. So it's not a problem. So I'm not registering the problem here in this situation. So I just don't see how it's a problem for the incarnation. So I don't know really what else to say, because even during Jesus's lifetime, you're talking about eating food. Jesus went to temple and took part in the Day of Atonement and everything else. He was baptized by John the Baptist. Why? He had to fully, willingly submit to the law of Moses to perfectly keep it for us who couldn't perfectly keep it. And there's no problem with that. In fact, that's part of his mission, is to do that exact thing. Why? Because Israel failed at it, showing she's not the suffering servant.
All right, you definitely are not answering my question. If Jesus is God and a perfect sacrifice, he wouldn't be partaking of sin offerings. So let me go with my second question, because you're not going to answer it. Your great dance moves, though. Ezekiel 45 and 22. Because remember, he said that he's a perfect sacrifice according to Hebrews 10 and 10. And it should be upon that day that the prince, who's the royal Messiah, shall prepare for himself and for all the people of the land a bullock for a sin offering. 7 days of the feast shall you prepare a burnt offering to Yahweh. So Ezekiel 45 and 22 is saying that the royal Messiah is eating a sin offering for himself. Why is Jesus eating a sin offering? Is he a sinner?
No. but he is identified with sinners. So as I mentioned in my previous answer, and this is why it is relevant, Jesus would have partaken in the Day of Atonement. Jesus would have partaken in Passover. We even have examples of that, of course, in Scripture. All the festivals of Israel, whatever's on the calendar, Jesus is faithfully and perfectly keeping, despite he himself not having any sin. And by the way, Jesus is described multiple times in the gospel as being sinless, and even his enemies recognizing that. And ironically enough, the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 is also described as one who had done no violence, no deceit was found in his mouth. And so this is an identification of the righteous with the wicked, and this is part of God's mercy and grace. So it's just part of how God operates. This is what he does. Otherwise, we would all be in really big trouble, Judah.
So Jesus is a sinner.
Jesus took on sin. 2 Corinthians 5:21, he became sin.
Sir, this is a future prophecy. So Jesus is going to come back as a sinner.
I definitely didn't say that.
Well, okay, let's read it again.
So Jesus is not a sinner. He's not going to come back as a sinner. But just like the scapegoat.
Hold on, Vocab, hold on. Let's hold on. Ezekiel 44, verse 3. It is for the prince. He is the leader. So he will sit within to eat the food before Yahweh. He shall come in by the way of the hall of the eastern gate, and by that way shall he depart. Why is your God coming in to eat to my God, and he's subservient to the Levites, and he's eating a sin offering? Why is he doing that? And why does he have to make sin offerings for himself in the future, not in the past, in the future? Remember, you said that he's God.
Yes. Again, not the topic of debate, but I'll be glad to answer it. It must be remembered that some of the things you're bringing up have been dealt with in the New Testament by Jesus himself. And I'll explain what I mean by that. In John 5, when they're like, hey, why are you healing people on the Sabbath? He's like, hey, the priests, they're doing their thing all the time. And one greater than the priest, one greater than the temple is here. Jesus claimed to be better and more important than the priest and the temple itself in multiple places, sometimes implication, sometimes explicitly. Jesus also is greater than Moses. He says, one greater than Moses is here. So the whole structure, the most important people, the most important elements of the Old Testament, as significant and important as they were, Jesus is saying, I am the fulfillment of those things. So Jesus is greater than the temple you're talking about, and he's greater than all the sacrifices. He's greater than them all. That's why the veil was ripped.
Okay, so we're not going to get an answer as to why, according to him, this is Jesus. We know that King David's coming back. So Jesus is going to come back a sinner. He won't answer that. And he's making sin offerings, which he's supposed to be a sacrifice. So this goes back to Isaiah 53. If he's a sacrifice, why is he eating food, a portion for sinners? For himself. I'm not saying
Jesus is doing those things, brother.
No, I am. But you're saying that he's the Messiah, so he must. Okay, is Jesus going to rule as King of Israel?
He's going to rule King of the earth. You can call it King of Israel if you want, but you got to include everybody else.
Is Jesus going to sit on the throne of David?
Yeah, it depends if you're trying to mean that literal, but basically he's also one who's greater than David. He's described in the scripture as the greater David. So yes, but he's the one who has the everlasting kingdom. David did not have an everlasting kingdom. Jesus will.
Okay, so is Jesus, because in Jeremiah 33, it says there will be a monarchy of Levites and Davidic kings. So is Jesus going to have human relations with women, being that he's your God?
The only human relations with women Jesus will have is paying for their sin by dying on the cross for them. And that includes Mary, to all you Catholics out there.
So for the record, Jesus is not going to carry on the dynasty.
Jesus is the dynasty. He's definitely going to carry on.
So there's a whole bunch of Jesuses. So there are many Jesuses then.
Well, in a manner of speaking, remember this text we're reading, Isaiah 53 says he's going to see his offspring. His offspring are his spiritual seed. I hope I'm one of them. So there's a sense in which there's many Jesuses. We're called Christians for a reason.
Okay, last question. So you're not answering anything. Can you show me in the Torah and prophets where Jesus Christ's name is mentioned? If you can do that, do you win the debate? I don't have anything more to say. I just want to see the word Jesus, 2 words, Jesus Christ in the Torah and prophets.
Well, that would be mighty strange to find 2 English words in a Hebrew document, don't you think? I think so. So we're not going to find
how
that.
Okay, Yahushua HaMashiach. Can you find that in the Torah and the prophets?
Well, you do see, of course, one spoken of who's a deliverer. And of course, you and I both know that's what Joshua or Jesus means. Yahweh delivers. And that is what the people who first saw Jesus in Luke, that's exactly what they said about him. Yahweh's delivering his people. And the Jews
So
knew this. That's why
Joshua
there
was-
was a lot of people naming their kids Jesus at the time, huh?
Wait, hold on, man. You're milking my time. So Joshua was the Messiah.
No, but his name does mean Yahweh will deliver or save. If you feel like milk your time, you can ask another question if it's okay with Marlon. Go ahead.
No, you milk my time. That's okay. It's fine.
No,
Everybody
I'm
got
saying
the
you can
picture.
go if you feel that's the case. I don't want you to feel cheated. I want you to go if you got another question.
No, you're not going to answer them, so it's all good. You know, it's fine.
I'll do
What
my
are you gonna say?
best because,
No, you're
frankly,
just gonna-
Judah, I'll do
no,
my
you're gonna
best.
go
But
on-
honestly, your questions seem like they literally have nothing to do with Isaiah 53. But if you want to ask another one, I'll definitely allow it because I want to be fair.
All right. Just okay. According in the future, because he already said that Jesus is not going to perpetuate this confused counsel. Just one more time. In the future, the Messiah is making a sin offering underneath the Levites. Why is Jesus, who's supposed to be God, eating sin offering or making a sin offering for himself if he's God? Why would your God sin?
Okay, I think I'm trying to understand what you're saying. A few things about this. Jesus, none of that's happening in the future. I'm not one of the Christians who believes there's going to be a third temple built and there's reestablishment and there's sacrifices. All that's done away with forever. And Hebrews is the best place for us to go to that. In Hebrews, it talks about he's the high priest who sits down once and for all. His work is done is what that means. And it's fascinating that it's almost like Yahweh forced the hands of those who practice Judaism by having the temple be destroyed in 70 AD, meaning you can't go back to those temple sacrifices. It's not even an option if you wanted to these days. And so people just say, well, I just asked God for forgiveness, but that's not what's mandated by Old Testament religion, but you don't even have the option anymore. It's kind of like you want your sins paid for, it's Jesus or nothing.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for that. Cross X. The audience loved it, man. You guys are great. Appreciate the decorum. You guys are sharing. Good conversation. All right, we are jumping into round 3, and once again, this will be 8 minutes for each of you. So, Vocab, you're back in the seat for 8 minutes, and
wait, hold on. Yeah, I want to. We have 8 minutes, and this is like our. What is this?
Yes, this is rebuttal, I believe. Because it just says round 1, round 2, round 3. Round 1 was opening. Round 2 was sort of rebuttal or continuation of your opening. And then round 3, I believe, is another rebuttal or sort of to wrap up some of the lingering questions there that are still hanging around, concerns you guys want to address, right?
Okay.
And that's for 8 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so you got 8 minutes. Okay.
That's correct.
Let me get everything. I'm going to share my screen again here.
Set for 11:20 p.m.
Okay. I want to show something that's relevant to this debate that's important, I think, to understand. And it's this, that the Messiah suffering for his people is a proper Hebraic concept. And ultimately, the reason why I bring that up now is to remind everyone the nature of the passage before us, because that's exactly what's happening there. I think that Judah's take on it just simply doesn't do justice to the passage. There's a good book by Michael Brown I recommend people to get called The Real Kosher Jesus. And he says this, and it's correct. The concept of a suffering Messiah is well known in Jewish tradition. And there's a book on that you can see listed below, or I'm sorry, a website with sources for that. Jews have no basis for rejecting Yeshua's messianic claims because he suffered before he was exalted. To the contrary, this is a pattern laid out clearly in the Hebrew scriptures, and it is reflecting some later rabbinic traditions as well. Now, I saw some people in the live chat say, well, those aren't our people, or something like that. Well, I would want to know, when are we thinking that this transition happened to where these are no longer your people? Because if some elements of the Talmud, and I give 3 examples on the screen actually, like Sanhedrin 98a especially, if they're attested from earlier traditions, then it seems like Judah would have to recognize these are his people. Nonetheless, it's important for the larger discussion between Christians and Jews. You have an example here in the Zohar 2:112a, and here's what it says. Check this out. In the hour in which they tell the Messiah about the sufferings of Israel in exile and the sinful among them who seek not the knowledge of their master, the Messiah lifts up his voice and weeps over those sinful among them. This is what is written. He was wounded because of our transgressions. He was crushed because of our iniquities. The point by saying that is, this passage was understood by many. And in the history of Hebraic interpretation of these passages to refer to the Messiah and the Messiah suffering in some way for the sins of Israel. And in fact, because it appears the Messiah is killed in this passage, some people have come up with the concept in the past of 2 messiahs. Dr. Raphael Patai, formerly University of Jerusalem, 20 books on Jewish religious belief, wrote this: when the death of the Messiah became an established tenet in Talmudic times, this was felt to be irreconcilable with the belief in the Messiah as the Redeemer who would usher in the blissful millennium of the Messianic age. So their wrestling was questioned because they realized this seems to be describing the Messiah's death. See? The dilemma was solved by splitting the person of the Messiah in 2. That's why the Babylonian Talmud predicts Messiah ben Yosef will be slain. And then there's the other person sometimes discussed about being Messiah ben David. Looking at the Babylonian Talmud, check this out. Sukkot 52a, the land shall mourn every family apart, and that's referencing Zechariah 12:12 there. One said this is the mourning over the Messiah, indicating his death. And the land shall mourn. What is the reason of the mourning? Rabbi Dosa says, over the Messiah who will be slain, not Israel. No one ever thought Israel was dying. I don't know where Judah is getting that from. Even the passage itself is symbolic. If you read the Hosea passage, it doesn't work to apply it to this Isaiah 53 passage. Here's a medieval commentator, dates and name on the screen. Quote, when Messiah ben Joseph is killed, his body will remain cast out. And then the context is saying on the streets of Jerusalem for 40 days until Messiah ben David comes and brings him back to life. And then Messiah ben David will reign in safety and peace for many days. That's a fascinating thing that some folks were thinking at the time. Now, the next slide relates to questions I was asking to Judah. And this is very important to just look at the screen and just see in its clarity. He pierced our transgression. He crushed our iniquities. Upon him, chastisement, our peace. His wounds, we are healed. It's so clear. The Messiah atoning for his people is a proper Hebraic concept. Even in the Targums, Isaiah 52:15, which says he'll sprinkle many nations. The king shall, now notice again, it's he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shout at him, for that which had not been told them shall they see, that which they had not heard consider. Targum paraphrases this as a reference to the Messiah. Here's the quote. As the house of Israel anxiously hoped for him many days, which was poor among the nations, their appearance and their brightness being worse than that the sons of men. So notice, looking at as a messianic reference, and the source is on the screen. Another example relating to that. This verb here, he shall sprinkle, is essentially a technical word. It's found in the Mosaic law for sprinkling of oil, water, or blood, cleansing or purifying rite. And in Leviticus 4:6-7, the priests are to sprinkle blood before the altar, pour the blood at the bottom of the altar as a burnt offering. The Dead Sea Scrolls often present 2 Messiah figures, one from David's lineage and the coming king referred to as the Messiah of Israel. So they're doing their own thing there at Qumran, but interesting, you still got 2. And the other is a priestly Messiah. In a scroll called the Messianic Rule, it's stated, and you have the references there, but specifically the Mishnah makes another reference to this priest anointed for battle. There's more interesting things in the Dead Sea Scrolls that show they understood. I encourage everyone to take a screenshot of this that show that they understood these passages to be messianic, including a hapax legomena that's very interesting in relationship to I anoint and anointing. And this is very important in relationship to Isaiah 53:5, where you have the pierced language, because there's a further connection to Zechariah 12:10. And this is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, because sometimes people talk about the Masoretic text in 5310, and you'll see a textual corruption there about he made him sick. This is a common discussion. I'm surprised it wasn't brought up tonight, but I had a slide prepared for it just in case and wanted to share it with you. Now, I brought up Hebrews. I want to show something from Hebrews 10 in relationship to Isaiah 52 that's very important. 10:19 through 22. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, which he hath consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. That's what's happening in Isaiah 52. This is a further explicit version of it, but it's the same thing. And this is important because where's the high priest today, Judah? Where is he? He hasn't been around for a long time. It's Jesus or nothing when it comes to this. Where's the King of Israel? Where's the Messiah? All these were fulfilled in Jesus. The window for the Messiah to come is done, except for his second time. Hebrews 12:24, Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling. This is an important thing. And notice how the text speaks about him pouring out his soul. How is Israel pouring out their soul? And notice it's willing. Let me read this quote from Leon Morse's book. The offering of the nefesh is spoken of in sacrificial terms. It is in a sham and a guilt offering. But in verse 12, we have this offering of nefesh described as he poured out his nefesh unto death. This is not figurative language, Judah. This person died for real. Now, there's multiple new covenant fulfillments. Judah said he doesn't want to go there. But if you don't have it filled in Jesus, you don't have it fulfilled. And I encourage Judah to think about this. Because of verses like this is why recently Zion Lex, he now sees Isaiah 53. He's referring to Jesus. For 25 years, he didn't. So this passage is powerful, powerful. Multiple places show the Messiah must suffer, and multiple places where Jesus had to remind people about that reality. All right, there's more there to say for now, but I believe that is time.
It is indeed. All right, Judah, you're back up in the seat for 8 minutes, and I will start your time as soon as you begin to speak. You can mute it, Judah.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to share my screen real quick and just give a little rebuttal. Well, because this guy is not going to answer anything, but it's okay. It's all right. Just a little rebuttal. Vocab Malone doesn't want to go here. Ezekiel is the Paul killer. Paul and Ezekiel have some issues. I'm going to roll with the servant of Yahweh. Paul was no servant of Yahweh. You clearly see here that the royal Messiah will be offering a sin offering in the future. This means that Isaiah 53 cannot be talking about a person being a perfect sacrifice for sins. No, it's just talking about the nation's sins fall upon Israel because we're the ones given the Torah. They weren't giving anything. Psalm 73 tells you this, but he will not address this. Upon that day shall the prince, who is the ruler, you can find this in Ezekiel 34 and 24, prepare for himself and for all the people of the land a bullock for sin offering. Sin offering. And 7 days of the feast he shall prepare a burnt offering to Yahweh. Well, according to Vocab Malone, his God is Yahweh, who was a not so good king named Jehu, which is, I don't know where Jehu would be his God, but that's weird. But still, you clearly see here whom he says is the Messiah is offering a sin offering to Yahweh. You can't have them both. You can't have Jesus be the royal Messiah, the king, offering burnt offerings to Yahweh and Yahweh too. Unless Jesus is schizophrenic or the prophets of Yahweh are liars. Come on, you can't have both. We got to stop that. 2. Another thing Vocab Malone knows about who one of our messiahs is Onias III, who was the leader of the Zadok or Qumran community of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is Ezekiel 44, verse 15. This is in the future, Christians. But the Levitical priests who are descendants of Zadok and who guarded my sanctuary, when the Israelites went astray from me, are to come near to minister before me. They are to stand before me to offer sacrifices of fat and blood, declares Yahweh. Now remember, Vocab Malone said he don't believe that we're going to have a temple. So that means the book of Isaiah has to go, because Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2 says that the temple of Yahweh shall, stand as the on the mountain, and all nations shall stream to it. But he says he doesn't believe that there's actually going to be a temple. Let's keep going. We can't go by rabbinic Judaism. It was created after Christianity. Okay, we're gonna get them out of here, right? We're not going to go by Akiva Yosef, who was a Edomite Canaanite convert to the religion known as Judaism in the Christian era. So we got to get him out of here. They're not reliable. All right. This is Isaiah 51, which Vocab also keeps ducking out. Who's getting their behind kicked? It's the Israelites. This is Isaiah 51, verse 21. Therefore, hear now this, O afflicted. Remember Isaiah, the afflicted one. Oh, now hear this, you afflicted and drunken, but not with wine. Verse 22. Thus saith Yahweh the Lord, and your God that pleased the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken out of your hand the cup of trembling, even the dregs of the cup of my fury, slavery, and you shall drink no more of it again. Slavery, oppression, replacement theology, all that's going to go. Verse 23, Isaiah 51 through 23. Sorry. But I will put it in the hand of them that afflict you. This is talking to the children of Israel. This is not talking to Jesus, who has said to your soul, not Jesus' soul, to your soul, Israelites, bow down, that we may go over. And you has laid down your body as the ground and as the street to them that went over. No, wait a minute. This sounds exactly like, wait a minute. They went as a sheep and they offered not any resistance. And let's read it again. Isaiah 51:23. This is 2 chapters prior. But I will put it into the hand of them that afflict you, the nations, which have said of your soul, not Jesus, the Israelites, bow down when I come to your town, that we may go over. And you, Israelites, you has laid your body on the ground, which is voluntarily, right? And as the street to them that went over. Didn't say, bruh, stop. Who died and is coming back? Ezekiel 37, verse 9. He said, prophecy to the breath, prophecy to the breath, prophecy, son of man, and say to it, this is what Yahweh God says. Come, breathe, come, breath, and from the 4 winds, and breathe into these slain. Into these what? Who? These slain. Not him. These people. That they may live. So wait, there's some people that died, figuratively. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them, and they came to life and stood on their feet, a vast army. Then he said to me, son of man, these are the bones. These bones are the people Israel. Not the Christian church, not a billion Jesuses. It says the people of Israel. They say, the Israelites, our bones or our counsel are dried up, and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Cut off. We're dead. We have no hope. We're dead. Therefore, prophecy and say to them, this is what Yahweh says, my people, I'm going to open your graves and bring you up from them, and I will bring you back to the land of Israel. That's that Ezekiel 53, verse 10. Then you, my people, not Jesus, not the Christian church, not the Gentiles, then you, my people, will know that I am Yahweh when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live. And I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, Yahweh, have spoken, and I have done it, declares Yahweh. How much time do I have?
You have 2 minutes left. 2 minutes and 10 seconds, actually.
All right, I don't need to share this anymore. Let me get off of that. All right. I was going to use my remaining time just to reiterate. We're having a major problem here. Again, much love to the Christian community. Do like Mark 12 says, keep the Torah. If you're a Gentile. If you're an Israelite, well, do like Jesus says and keep the Torah. Right, like Moses said. He said Jesus is greater than Moses. You can't find that anywhere in the Torah and the prophets, right? I get that it says that in the New Testament, but it doesn't say that in the Torah. So you clearly see that Israel is the one that lives, that the nations see, they hate, they abhor, and they thought that we were stricken by God. As you can clearly see in real time today, you the so-called Black Americans, a lot of Latinos, Arabs, Africans, whoever is an Israelite, Asians, even so-called Europeans, whoever's an Israelite, guess what? If the curses are on you, then you are the people that, Yahweh turned his face from, that will come back again. It's the Christian's job to, provoke you and antagonize you and to say that you no longer matter. As the book of Deuteronomy says, it says, you provoke me with your non-gods, I shall provoke you with the non-people. When during the time of Moses, there was no Christian people. Now, like Yahweh says, you see there's a religion, people that are literally saying, you don't matter anymore. Go away, young man. It's Christians' time. We're going to take your name out and put Jesus in there and expect you to deal with that. But our whole book is witness to you, your birth, life, death, and resurrection. With that, all praise to Yahweh God.
All right, thank you both for a fantastic debate. Appreciate you guys so much. So the last order of business will be the 20-minute.
Yeah, so I'm not going to play the public Q&A. If you want to hear all that, you got to go back to the Gospel Truth channel to go watch that. I mean, a shout out to Marlon for hosting that debate. Shout out for Vocab and shout out to Judah. I thought they both brought out some interesting points that need to be addressed, and also the nuance of both points of some of the points need to be waded through and whatnot. However, before I do such, I'm going to actually stop playing this video, and I'm going to actually play a video clip of me asking some questions to Vocab on his platform from the chat, and him responding to me via live on his live stream, etc. One of these questions is when from Rabbi Eduardo was on his channel, who had an interesting back and forth with Judah in the Q&A, and they've since had a back and forth on Radar's channel, etc. And hopefully they can get some kind of debate scheduled between them. Judah saying that Radar's winning. I hope that's not the case. I think that Radar and Judah would be a perfect debate, because Radar seems to want to go after people like Tovia Singer and whatnot, and so I think that he would like to focus on Old Testament Jews or Israelites, etc. If he's going to have those kind of debates, etc. So I think they would be perfect opponents. I would like to sit down and dialogue with all three of the brothers, like Judah, Radar, and Vocab on this matter, and a few other concepts, few other concepts having to do with positions on the Old Testament, New Testament, etc. I think that we can have an interesting and respectful conversation, and I think we represent a lot of interesting communities. But enough of me running my mouth right quick. Let me play this other video file with these clips right quick. There we go.
The Messiah must suffer. The Messiah must suffer. And you may say, well, wait a minute. What do you mean? Well, there's a few things about that. And one is, first of all, the fact that that's the way Jesus interpreted the scripture. He understood that to be the case. Now, was he out of bounds for saying that? Was he wrong for saying that? Well, of course, hopefully you understand the answer is, of course, we're going to say no to that. But let me read to you some of the scriptures on the screen so you can see just what we're talking about. Luke chapter 9, verse 22 says that he charged them and commanded them to tell this to no one. And then listen to what Jesus said. Okay, listen along. The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. I mean, Jesus is saying that this must happen. And when you read the larger context and see other statements he made, it seems like he's saying this is what is supposed to happen canonically, as if it's predicted in some way. At the very least, I would argue he's saying this is the plan of God for me. But it's very fascinating language. I mean, Jesus is foretelling his death here. He's teaching the 12 here that his role as the Messiah, the Christ, involves suffering. It involves death. There's other predictions and reminders and proofs of the death and resurrection of Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. I could go through a whole list. I just got a few on the screen, but let me just show you something real quick. Number one, when we deal with our Islamic friends, our Muslim friends, right? They will say, because the Quran tells them, that Isa ibn Miriam, as they honestly incorrectly call him, he didn't hang up on a cross and die. That didn't happen. They'll say that, right? But yet, they'll affirm elements or parts of the Gospels, the Injil, right? This puts him in what has been termed a catch-22 situation. Because if they're going to affirm the Gospels in any meaningful way, but then you have Jesus saying in the Gospels, I'm going to die. He's talking about predictions here about his death, but then he doesn't. Well, is Jesus a true prophet or a false prophet? The Quran would say he's a true prophet, but it would also say that he did not die on a cross. Now, usually the simple version, and there's complex versions of this, involve that part of the gospel was corrupt or something like that. And there's not valid reasons why. It's not like we're dealing with textual problems and theological reconsiderations or something like that. It's really just, well, listen, it doesn't match up with the presuppositions that the Quran has me have. What have you guys heard a Muslim friend say? Have you ever brought this up to them? Say, the Jesus of the Injil predicts his death, and yet your Quran says that didn't happen. Shout out to some great apologists up in here. We got Radar Apologetics. Everyone, please subscribe to his channel. I don't really have a lot of people watching tonight, I see, so I do appreciate you guys stopping by. I do ask people to leave comments, help out. But I tell you, for whatever bump I can give you, please subscribe to him and also subscribe to my man, The Gospel Truth. That's Marlon Wilson. He's the one who hosted the debate between myself and Marlon Wilson. Has someone dropped the link? I'm sorry, it's not between Marlon Wilson. Marlon Wilson hosted between myself and Judah Natzarah. Sorry. Yeah, I would love to hear what people think about the debate. You know, did you enjoy it? What do you guys think? And I see Carter Goodson is in the house. Shout out to you as well. And, you know, this is a late night one, and I didn't give people a long time notice. You know what I'm saying? And so I understand that's kind of how it goes. But I'm actually going to pin your comment because that's a great question. I should probably do a poll, but it's too late, and they'll also see your channel, so that's all good. You're right. The Muslim Jesus is essentially pointless because of that situation that they've got. And Orthodox Moore says, I would argue and have debated that the Quran agrees with the death of Jesus on the cross. That's fascinating. Love to have that discussion sometime. Orthodox Moore says, do you agree that the dying and being raised applies both to Jesus and Israel? Do you say it's only Jesus? Well, that's an interesting way to put it. I'm going to say that I'm going to go with Jesus. I'm going to go with Jesus. Here's the thing. A resurrection of Israel, unless it's understood to be typological Israel, which is the church, eschatological Israel, which means the end times or latter days Israel. Unless it's understood to be that kind of Israel, then I'm going to say the church. Now, notice those are descriptions I utilize for what the church is. Eschatological Israel, end times Israel, latter days Israel. Saying that's the church. Not ethnic, not physical, not national, but in the most important senses. But see, the resurrection language in that, I don't really go with even that in the sense of what maybe a person is thinking when they ask this question. I don't know about you in particular, but when other people have talked to me about it. Because I am looking at it through the lens of other passages in the New Testament to talk about how we're baptized with him in his death. And then because of that, we'll be raised with him in life. Or the fact that we partake of something that he set up. 1 Corinthians 15, he's the first fruits and will be a harvest that comes later. So by our union with him, we die with him in a almost mystical sense. You never hardly hear me using that word. Every now and then I will use that word. But almost in essentially what I might call a mystical sense, we die with him in his death. And because of that, are able to be raised to life in a figurative sense, in the sense of our hearts were dead and now they're made alive. This is by God's action alone, by the way. And in the end, our bodies as well because of him. So that's really the way I'm going to take something like that. But ultimately, it's only because it's fulfilled in Christ. Israel is not the suffering servant. Isaiah 53:8 says, "For the transgression of my people he was stricken." This is not a plurality or a collective noun here. What people was Isaiah part of? And this is mentioned in the previous slide as well. Israel, right? Now, if the people of Israel were the servant of the Lord here, then who would my people be? My people will die for my people? That doesn't make sense, does it? This first person plural pronoun appears 10 times in verses 4 through 6. I'm going to put Orthodox Moore's question on the screen here. Okay, so I do see people talking about the righteous remnant of Israel. And I do not usually see it in the way you're putting it, because you're kind of running it through Messiah, so that's sort of a different twist, which I would say ultimately I appreciate it. I think it gets closer to the truth. Because I'm looking at your full question. I don't know if this will do justice in this time here, but I'll say something briefly about it, what you're saying here. It is true that we now suffer like the suffering servant suffered as Christians. But it's not limited to the righteous remnant of Israel, first of all. That's the thing. It's not limited to Jewish people, first of all. That's part of the problem there from my vantage point, number one. And one way that you can see this is in 1 Peter. He says, if you suffer as a Christian. Someone would say, yeah, but well, who are Christians? It's never just been Jewish people. Except in the very beginning. Primarily was, no doubt about that. But it's not a Jewish thing. Becoming a Christian doesn't equal becoming a Jew. It doesn't equal changing your ethnicity. Which, you know all this, I'm just saying. So it's the Christians who suffer, but it's Jew and Gentile alike who are suffering. And their suffering is not really redemptive in a salvific, meritorious way, almost the way some Roman Catholics might view it, or, of course, some rabbis see their deaths. You have these examples in even modern Jewish history in relationship to certain happenings, events. Michael Brown brings these out. Now, what I'm saying is, John tells us this discussion that Jesus has with the disciples in John 13 through 15, the farewell discourse. And in there, Jesus is telling them, hey, you're going to suffer too, man. You're going to suffer. Why? Because you're not better than the master. I'm the master. You're going to suffer. So we do take on the ministry to the world of the suffering servant. No doubt about that. But it's because we have been already redemptively suffered for by the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. So we are being like him. The world rejected him before, it rejects us now. So the servant ministry is certainly transferred to the church as the body of Christ, no doubt about that. But that's not a Jewish or Israel thing. That's a Gentile and Jew thing alike. And it's not saving anyone. That's why Isaiah 53 has to be about the Messiah, because the nature of the death and what it brings. I hope that helps. But you should probably know how a Christian deals with that verse. Hopefully. I was just looking at that today. What is that, Isaiah 45? I got it in my notes somewhere. I was doing a study on covenants. Orthodox Moore, what do you and Rabbi Eduardo believe about Gentiles bringing Israelites out of the nations to Jerusalem as an offering to the Lord? Per Isaiah 66, 19 and 20, will it happen? It's a long question. But, I don't know if you...
That's weird. I got to look that up.
Well, let's see what we're talking about. Isaiah 66 reads as follows. Verses 19 to 20. See, we're trying to do rapid, but then Orthodox more. Well, this is an older question. This is an older question. It's not his fault. But here's 19. I will set a sign among them, and from them I will send survivors to the nations, to Tarshish, Pool, and Lud, who draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the coastlands far away, that have not heard my fame or seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the nations. And they shall bring all your brothers from all the nations as an offering to the Lord, on horses and in chariots and in litters and on mules and on dromedaries. Hold on, I gotta look that up. What, guys? What's a dromedary? It's a camel. It's a basically like a large beast of burden, like a camel or a donkey. Okay, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, says the Lord. Just as the Israelites bring their grain offering in a clean vessel to the house of the Lord, and some of them also I will take for priests and for Levites, says the Lord. So he's asking us if we think that happened or is going to happen. Off the top,
I mean, it just looks like it looks symbolic, right? It looks metaphoric of the natural branches bringing in people from the nations, from survivors of this war, to bring them back into the presence of God, into the place where he's at. That's what it seems like off the top. It doesn't mean that they're literally a sacrifice.
Do you think it did happen or will happen?
No, I don't know. People have to understand it's really hard to put where these things are, right?
So I think the survivors here in 666:19 are Israelite believers who managed to survive these judgments of God.
Yeah, like I said, yeah.
And then,
that's what I was thinking.
All these places that are mentioned are like kind of remote. So it's like they're purposely going, like mentioning these far out places. And it looks like the Gentiles will. Let me actually, this is interesting. The ESV Study Bible has this little note, 66:21. This speaks of Gentiles, perhaps as those who will carry out the calling of Israel, or else in view of the mention of Levites as those who will provide worship leadership within the people of God. I don't know. I'd have to look more into it.
Yeah. But it looks like there's some drawing closeness of the nations into the people, though.
Yeah, so shout out to Vocab for taking my questions. As always, I appreciate that. Now, I played those clips because I thought that they showed some interesting insight on Vocab's views on stuff. I wasn't able to ask Judah similar questions and whatnot because we're completely different time zones. My G's over in Japan and whatnot, so when he's live, it's mad early for me in the morning and whatnot. I jumped on the panel with him the other day to try to ask him some questions and whatnot, but another debater, Chris Harris, had jumped on and kind of took over the conversation, so I was not able to have the same conversation, unfortunately. So I won't be able to give an even view here. But the reason why I asked some of these questions had to do with a lot of what Judah was talking about in the debate that I thought were nuanced perspectives that I think that a lot of Christians miss, and they hear it the first time and don't necessarily hear what the person is saying. They might assume something else is being said. So the first part of the clip that I played had to do with him talking about the Quran and whatnot, and him stipulating that he thought that there was an inconsistency with the Quran and the New Testament, in that Jesus says something and that he believed the Quran said something else or whatnot. And something that I want to point out for most Christians, this is where I'm going to start to slow the conversation down for Christians, Messianic Jews, all this type of stuff, right? So in any kind of apologetics to like a Torah only, Tanakh only, or an Orthodox Jew of some sort, you got to understand right off rip that they're going to have the same perspective on the New Testament and the way you're talking about it as you would have towards the Quran and what it has to say towards the Bible and whatnot. And Judah brought that up in the debate, which I thought was a fantastic point. Also, Vocab, I would love to sit down and have that conversation with you about what the Quran says on the matter of the cross, etc. I think that would be a fantastic discussion. However, again, the point still being that this is where a lot of Christians run into special pleading in the apologetics game and don't recognize this concept. And this is where people need to slow down and recognize this, because it's special pleading to stipulate, okay, I'm not going to rock with the Quran because I believe it says something different than the New Testament, and then not understand that if you're an Orthodox Jew or Torah only or Tanakh only, etc., that there's certain things stipulated in the Old Testament, certain things stipulated in Tanakh and whatnot. For instance, like the eschatology of the Tanakh and whatnot, it seems to get brushed away by a lot of Western Christians. The way the Davidic kingdom is described, the way the messianic figure is described, the way the nation of Israel is described in the eschatology of the Tanakh and whatnot. It seems to get, like I said, just there's a lot of hand waving that goes to that, right? Or a lot of unfamiliarity with it. And this is one thing I appreciated about this debate, is that there was a lot of things brought out that I know that both sides probably hadn't heard before. So I very much so appreciate the debate. There was a question there about me asking Vocab about his perspective. Does he believe that the death of Israel also applies, or does the death, burial, and resurrection narrative apply to Jesus and Israel, or just Jesus? Now, he said just Jesus. Again, this is a situation to where, in an apologetics situation, if I'm talking to a Tanakh only, Torah only, or Orthodox Jew, that's not going to jive well with the text or whatnot, because again, this is going to be a situation to where you're going to be encouraging me to look at the New Testament the way that most Christians look at the Quran, right? Because there's clear language that Judah pointed out in the debate, in Hosea and Ezekiel, where you see a death and resurrection narrative. So I hope most Christians can understand that. And so I would stipulate that there needs to be a step back and a slow down conversation to understand a lot of the questions that people from a Tanakh only or Orthodox Jew perspective are having, and issues that they're having with a lot of the Christian apologetics and whatnot. Because a lot of times I hear Christians saying, well, they just don't accept the New Testament, so that's their issue. Well, all right. So for instance, I accept the Tanakh, the New Testament, and the Quran, right? When I talk to a Christian, I put the Quran down. When I talk to an Orthodox Jew or Tanakh, I put the New Testament and the Quran down. And I can make the same arguments from all three books. I should be able, if I'm a Christian, I should be able to talk to a Tanakh only or an Orthodox Jew and put the New Testament down and still make all the same arguments. And if I can't, there's going to be some special pleading involved somewhere, I promise you. And that's not solid argumentation. You shouldn't expect people to respect that. And you should understand that that's causing people an issue in terms of how you treat them as well in certain situations and whatnot, right? Now this goes both ways, right? So if you're an Orthodox Jew or a Torah only, Tanakh only, whatnot, and there is a viable argument made from the Old Testament text, and that starts to get hand waved, that's an issue as well. So I'm going to get into this review a little bit and break down where both sides ask good questions, and then I'm going to break down my view, my personal view on the matter, because I take an in-between view on the stance. So where Judah takes the stance to where it's just the nation of Israel, where Vocab takes a stance that it's just the Messiah, I take a stance that Isaiah 53 can apply to both. So I don't have a dog in the fight in terms of like how they see things. And so I'm going to do my best to give an unbiased perspective on the debate itself and the points that were raised and the nuance that needs to get sifted through. So with that, let me stop sharing this one. Start sharing the other one. Appreciate y'all for hanging out. Share this, y'all. So there's a reason why you see all four of us on the thumbnail. I think there's an interesting conversation that can be had amongst all of us or whatnot. I've been talking to Judah for years. I've been talking to Vocab for years. I have yet to have dialogue with Rabbi Eduardo. I would love to sit down and talk with him because I think he has a very interesting perspective on things. And I think this would be a good conversation for a lot of Christian apologists and Jewish apologists, etc., to see. Being that we have a lot of background together, minus Rabbi Eduardo, and being that, including Rabbi Eduardo, we represent a vast array of belief systems and whatnot, right? However, let me get this one right. Let me get this right. There we go. So in the urban apologetics game, there's been a lot of things that have switched up in the past couple of years and whatnot. And I'm appreciative to the Most High for being parts of conversations that have helped change certain perspectives and directions of certain conversations and whatnot. And there's a couple of conversations I'm still trying to press towards and whatnot. And so one of them is this concept of Christian apologists are going to have to reckon with in some way, shape, or form that amongst the Latino community in the Americas and amongst the African descent community in the Americas, there is a large chunk of both populations that descend from Jewish populations in Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. This cannot be ignored. And so there are people in both communities who are waking up to a messianic Jewish identity. And so there's a lot of respectful conversations that need to be had about this because these are people's legitimate lineages. And so there's some arguments that used to be made towards messianic Israelites or whatnot that I've always thought were unfair, and so I try to interject myself into conversations to switch that up, to have it to be more of a respectful conversation on certain topics, based upon the fact that not everybody's making the same arguments. For instance, I am not a Hebrew Israelite. I'm not a BHI. I don't deal with the One West doctrine. I don't deal with the doctrine of the core doctrines of Hebrew Israelism. I reject all of it. I don't believe that just being a descendant of someone from the slave trade makes you an Israelite, and I don't reject any other people group like Ashkenazi Jews from being able to be Israelites. That being said, people like myself, so I come from both populations, right? So my father descends from West African populations, from the Sahel or whatnot, that are heavily admixed with these Hebrew populations. My mother comes from a North African population of Jews, etc., that came to America by way of Spain, etc. Right? Again, the same people, a lot of the same overlap you're going to find with people like Rabbi Eduardo, or people like Professor Covey. Shout out to Covey. Right? Judah actually has Puerto Rican background on one of his parents' sides or whatnot, right? So there's actually overlap between all three of us and all this. If we were to all take DNA tests, there's going to be a chunk of our DNA that we actually all share together in terms of DNA coming from the Iberian Peninsula, right? So that being said, we also represent different views of this thing, right? So Rabbi Eduardo seems to be like a pretty standard Messianic Jew. Something I really respect about Judah is Torah only, Tanakh only, but he also, if you sit down and have a conversation with him, he doesn't reject the concept of Jesus as like a righteous Torah teacher or something like that, right? But Judah, like again, he's a perspective that apologists should expect to run into via the fact that you should see this you should expect to see this in African American communities and also in Latino communities, that you're going to see people having both messianic perspectives and also like a Tanakh only or an Orthodox perspective, etc. Right? You're going to see that for multiple reasons. You're going to see that for people wanting, like, rejecting, like, well, I'll leave that part out. But bottom line is, you're going to see people accepting both perspectives from, again, Latino communities and also African American communities, right? So the argument shouldn't be hand waved. They shouldn't be rejected out of hand or whatnot, right? I respect the fact that Vocab was able to recognize, like, you know what, a lot of the arguments you hear here are going to overlap with what you're going to get with like a Tovia Singer debate or like a Orthodox Jewish debate or whatnot, right? Because I think that's the proper way of looking at the concept, right? 100%, I think that's the proper way of looking at the concept. Me, I'm a whole different ball of wax, right? In the sense to where I'm like a messianic Karaite in a sense, right? I accept the old and the new, but I do so from a Karaite perspective. Like, so I hear Rabbi Eduardo, like, he seems like as a Messianic Jew, I hear him reference rabbinic literature, but I don't believe he follows rabbinic literature, right? I know Judah does not follow rabbinic literature like that. He goes with the text and whatnot, right? And deals with the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc., 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 right? Me, again, as someone with the Karaite methodology, I also don't go with the rabbinic background. I deal strictly with the text, right? For Christians, that's like a sola scriptura concept, right? Something similar to, right? So I think that and I can't remember if Vocab was sola scriptura, but I do believe, I'm pretty sure he is. So I think we can have a good dialogue based upon those methodologies and whatnot, right? There's a lot of what I say that's going to sound similar, not the same, but similar to like a Torah only and Orthodox Jew, in the same way that Rabbi Eduardo does as well. And you're going to find that we're more like in terms like me, Judah, in radar apologetics, etc. Like, we're more similar than we are different. Going through those nuances, I think would be good for people in the apologetics game, and I think it would also be good for developing respect amongst the communities in terms of what they believe and whatnot. But that being said, I'm gonna go through this thing. Something I thought that were Vocab's best points from his opening round, where that he was arguing that Isaiah 53:2 is a Davidic messianic reference, and that Isaiah 53 is ultimately about a perfect substitute. There were a lot of other points that he made, and I could go through them point by point, but I think that a lot of those points were answered by Judah in the debate. So I'm leaving out stuff that I believe to be clearly answered by both debaters, and I'm including things that I think that there could be more discussion on. Right? And these are points that I thought that lead to the best further discussions and whatnot. Right? And so I thought these are good points. The Isaiah 53 2 point. And the Isaiah 53 is ultimately about a perfect substitute. Now, I didn't think that he did a good job in explaining why Isaiah 53 is a perfect substitute. I don't think he did a bad job, but I think there's some questions that could be answered, and I would love to go through them in person or whatnot. However, I do believe that the Davidic reference in Isaiah 53:2, like, I think that's not a bad reference in any way, shape, or form. I think there's a lot of good reasons to make that argument. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I think it's a solid argument. I think it's more solid than the point below, but I think that these are the most solid arguments that he had going through the debate. Now, going in his rebuttal round, these are I also think these are his best points and whatnot, where he brought up Ezekiel 39, 22 through 24, and was talking about Israel was punished for their sins and not others. Now, this I'm talking about in terms of his narrative, right? I thought that was a strong point. How is Israel going to heal when they are sick via Isaiah 1:6 or whatnot, right? I thought that was also the most solid point going forward in his rebuttal or whatnot. I think you can disagree on both points, but I think that they're both solid points to make if you're going to come at it from a Christian perspective. However, I also do think that Judah did a good job in answering the question in terms of he pointed out to one spot in the scrolls to where Israel is being healed or whatnot. That being said, though, I still think they were good points for Vocab to make. The points that I thought that he missed, right, is there was nothing about, he never really addressed in the majority of his rebuttal rounds anything about Israel dying and having a resurrection as a nation, and nothing about Israel as a nation being stricken and exalted by God. Like they're raising, like in the light of the rising kind of a concept, right? I thought he at the very end in his third rebuttal in terms of like the when they were done with their Q&A, he broke down the fact that he thought that the death and resurrection was a figurative concept. When I got into my questions with him, he said that no, the death doesn't apply to Israel as a nation. It only applies to Jesus and whatnot, right? There's a lot of meat on that bone. You feel me? So I would. This is a part of the conversation I would love to sit down and talk with Vocab on and get clarity on as to why he's saying certain things and why, again, this is something I would really like to understand, why the figurative language doesn't apply to the Messiah's death. And the fact that, so this is something I've debated before. I'm a debater. I have over 30 plus debates, time debates on the internet, etc., on multiple platforms. Unfortunately, not all of them. There were a good chunk of them was on the Solar Vision Debate League platform, which is they take all their videos down. I got a chunk of them that I have on that platform. With that being said, one of my debates that I do have is an Isaiah 53 debate, where and Isaiah 53 was something I was quite known for in that debate league and whatnot. And something that I was known for was pointing out the fact that the Asham in Isaiah 53 cannot be a literal Asham based upon how an Asham sacrifice is broken down in Leviticus 5 and Leviticus 7. In the sense, and I'll run through it real quick. So it says that he poured out his soul into death, etc., right? And again, as an Asham, etc. In the New Testament, there's a lot of figurative language to Jesus as a lamb, this, that, and the third. Passover lamb, this, that, and the third. He's a sacrifice, etc., this, and the third. However, there's and this is where I want Christians to understand where Orthodox Jews and where Torah only or Tanakh only is going to have a lot of issues on what that is, because like there's rules to what an Asham is that God gave to Moses. And so if you're going to change that, the change has to come like, okay, what prophet is now giving a new set of rules for what an Asham is? What prophet is now giving a new set of rules for what an Asham is? You got to point to that for that to make sense. Otherwise, this is why they talk about the human sacrifice part, because an Asham sacrifice is an animal sacrifice that's a burnt offering where the fat is separated from the organs and the priests eat thereof. The priest eat the sacrifice, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes along through this, right? Like that Jesus did not satisfy. He's not a burnt offering, right? His fat was not separated from his organs. The priest did not eat the meat of his body. His blood was not sprinkled around the altar, etc., whatnot, right? In the temple, etc. Like there's you would have to argue that he's a figurative Asham, no matter how you slice it. Even if you make the argument that it's a literal soul and a literal death, the Asham got to be figurative, man. Unless you can point towards some prophet breaking down, this is like, no, a human soul now can be used as the Asham sacrifice in the literal sense, right? In the literal, like a human being can be a literal Asham sacrifice. In the way, like again, that that you see in 5 and 7, where the body gets divvied up, burnt offering, eaten by the priest. I have yet to see that language. I have yet to see it. We're going forward. Vocab's Q&A round again. This was interesting because Vocab leans in with an Ezekiel 39 question. And what's dope is like Judah comes back with an Ezekiel 45. Oh, excuse me. Judah comes back with an Ezekiel 45 question, and Vocab kind of argues that, well, I wasn't really prepared in studying Ezekiel for an Isaiah 53 debate. I'm like, well, you kind of led in with the Ezekiel 39 question, which was a good question, I thought. Says Israel went, like, this was his question. He says Israel went into captivity for iniquity. So why do you say she is suffering for Gentiles' iniquity? Now, this is a question that I thought was an interesting question. The answer. Now, I would love to sit down with Judah and have more of a conversation about. I didn't get this part of his argument and understand something about debates, fam. You never get to all your information. You never get, as someone who's had over 30 plus debates, you never get through all your information. And no matter what, the debate's never long enough. Most of the time, like we could be teaching classes on this stuff for hours and whatnot. You see what I'm saying? So with the question, I thought there was an assumption that Vocab needed to prove a bit more, right? So in Isaiah 53, the concept of suffering for Gentiles' iniquity, like he needs to explain why that's the fact and why that's the case. It seems like more of an assumption than what he makes the argument in the debate, as far as I'm concerned. So this is also something I'd like to talk with Vocab more about, right? And so something I'd like to understand from Judah is when he says that because they were given the Torah, right? Like in the sense where Judah's saying that because Israel was given the Torah and no other nation was given the Torah, that Israel bears the sins of other nations. That's something that I would like to get more clear on. I've been talking to Judah for years, but I still don't understand that aspect of his doctrine or whatnot. So that's something I'd like to put on the table to get more of an understanding on when, if we can have like sit down dialogue in any way, shape, or form between all of us and whatnot, right? Something else I'd like to get more understanding on from what Judah was saying is so when Vocab is saying why isn't Isaiah 53:2 a Davidic or messianic passage, Judah was saying, well, it's not. Now, I wasn't quite grasping the argument he was making. And like I said, that you don't ever get enough time to talk. This goes for every side, right? Like the Vocab kept making the point. He was like, look, screenshot this. You don't get enough time for this here. Like, he's like, I wish I could tell you more. Like, yeah, this is how it works in a debate, right? And this situation, I would love to hear more from Judah on this concept and have that understood, because it's not something that I understood. The way he was saying it with the time he had to say it, and that I'm not saying that he was saying anything wrong. I'm saying I didn't understand it, right? So it could have been a user error. You feel what I'm saying? Very much so. Vocab's final round. He said it's funny that Judah thinks Israel dies. Nobody thought that. I'm with that. He kept touched on this. This is where he said he believed it was a figurative concept, and I thought that was extremely interesting for the reasons I've already said concerning Leviticus 5 and 7. So, copy and paste those comments. To Messiah's concept: Messiah ben Yosef and Messiah ben David. Now, this is where I would like to really slow things down, because he's pulling this from rabbinic sources or whatnot. And it if you go via the text, I think you can make the argument of two messiahs as well, right? And I think you can also make an like in multiple ways. I think you can make an argument for two messiahs, and I'll be making an argument for such in a second. But I appreciate that he recognizes this concept of whatnot in some way, shape, or form. He also talked about mentions two messiahs from the Targums, kingly and a priestly messiah, right? Which again I extremely appreciate. So for me, I take the position that it like there's a few righteous servants spoken of as individuals. Like you hear a bunch of people talked about as righteous servants and whatnot, but you'll hear the nation of Israel talked about as a righteous servant, in terms of like Jacob, my servant, etc. Or you also or you hear the concept of the Messiah being talked about in terms of like the Davidic Messiah as a servant, right? Or like David, my servant, right? And so in those situations, I think you can fit them both into what's being mentioned here in terms of the Messiah ben Joseph and the Messiah ben David, and also the kingly Messiah and the priestly Messiah. That he poured out his soul into death as a sham. He's like someone literally died here. You can't make it figurative or whatnot. And again, this part I really need cleared up because, and this can't be skipped over by a Christian. Like, please have the respect to not hand wave this comment and this critique here, because for a lot of sincere people who you're trying to talk to, who are Orthodox Jews and Torah only Israelites, etc., Tanakh only Israelites, etc., this concept is going to be an issue. It's a legitimate issue, particularly when you're saying to them that the death of Israel is figurative. You're saying this is literal, even though it doesn't satisfy a literal Hashem, but the death of Israel is figurative and not literal. So that begs the question: well, why can't this be figurative? Why does this have to be lived? Like, break this one down, like, and why does it only apply to one and not the other? Break that one down. Getting into Judah's realms. Like the best points I thought he brought out from his open rounds was Isaiah 53 is about 3 stages of Israel being the son of the Most High, right? I thought that was a really interesting concept, and you could tell that Vocab wanted more of a breakdown on it. He's like, well, give me like a linear breakdown of the timeline, blah blah, like, because it's a cogent argument. There's no son mentioned, obviously, but like in the concept of they're talking about multiple stages of things happening. Like, oh, okay, you make a very cogent argument for that. And what I thought was extremely potent is bringing out the fact that Israel dies and is raised on the 3rd day. Now, this is language that all Christians are going to recognize applies to the character of Jesus or whatnot, right? But are unaware that same language is used in the Old Testament. And so what I've really appreciated about what Judah was saying is like, can you show me where this language is applied to someone else in the Old Testament? And the reality is no, you're not going to find that. And so that's something that if you're going to talk to somebody who is an Orthodox Jew, Torah only, Tanakh only, etc., this is something that's got to get wrestled with. 100% has to get wrestled with. So you can't tell them that, like, because the language is clear on the fact that it's the nation of Israel, right? So you gotta turn that into a single individual, right? Who's not the nation of Israel, and that's got to be real hard, right? And so even if you want to make it apply to Jesus, what you can't do, and I need y'all to hear this, even if you want to make it apply to Jesus, or recognize the fact that the same thing is consistent with Jesus, right? What you can't do is deny that this applies to the nation of Israel. You can't do it. Like, if you do, like, it's like, don't expect anybody who's coming from that background of being an Orthodox Jew or Tanakh only, Torah only, to respect the argument, fam. And I'm saying this as somebody who accepts the New Testament. I thought Judah's best points from his rebuttal rounds was there was a lot of stuff that Vocab brought out. It's where, like, he was saying that once you get to Isaiah 40, there's a lot of references to Israel being the servant of God, but in Isaiah, but once you get to Isaiah 40, it starts to change and becomes a different servant. I thought that Judah did a really good job in his rebuttal around showing that Israel is still the servant past Isaiah 40. I thought he brought out an interesting argument with Israel making many nations righteous or whatnot, and this is something that I think also needs to get dealt with from a real thorough sit down in terms of going through the books of Isaiah, going through the books of Jeremiah, going through the books of Ezekiel and other books and whatnot, and getting a clear breakdown of what the eschatology of what the Old Testament, what the Tanakh says. Even if you disagree with it as a Christian in terms like, well, I believe that the New Testament changes things like this. Cool, no issue. But I think that going forward in terms of apologetics, we all need to be clear as to what is the actual eschatology of the Tanakh itself. If you want to talk about the eschatology of the New Testament, no issue. We can talk about both. But I think you can't just hold on to one and act like the other one. Like you can't say that the New Testament has eschatology in it, but that the Old Testament doesn't. That's not consistent, and that's not honest to the text in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to go through Isaiah and match up stuff in the Book of Revelation at one point in this, just to make that point. So when this is the miss point, right? And this is something these are what I thought were miss points. And again, I may have misunderstood what Judah was saying. Judah may not have had the time to explain his point. Either or, I disagree with the premise of the point, because I haven't seen the same thing in the scrolls. But I would love to sit down and understand what he's saying and whatnot, right? Because if you don't understand the argument, I think for a lot of people, it's going to sound like it's reaching, saying that Israel suffers for other sins in terms of like the Gentiles or whatnot. That's where I was stuck. I was like, the Gentiles, I need to know more about that. Now, if you make it for now, so this is where I was asking a question to Vocab about the righteous remnant of the nation of Israel, and Judah was talking about the righteous remnant as well. This is where I would like to get clear with Judah, because I think this would keep it to where other people don't think he is reaching on this argument, right? Is we can clearly show in the text, and I'll show it here, where there's language that has to do with Isaiah 53 about taking on the suffering of others or whatnot, and having and that also applying to the nation of Israel and the iniquities of their father, taking on the iniquities of their fathers and whatnot, right? The righteous remnant taking on the iniquity of their father, right? So I think there's a way you can make it apply. I'm just not certain how Judah does it. I think it would be fantastic to clear this up for the people, so no one's like, oh, he's reaching on this, because I know that there's at least one argument that can be made, and connecting it to the righteous remnant. I just don't know how he does it, right? But I do know he believes in the righteous remnant. So I would love to see how he walks it out in his eschatology and whatnot. And so you saw when I brought it up with Vocab, he was like, oh, he had to pause about the righteous remnant coming through the Messiah council. He's like, oh, that's a different take. And whether you stick to the Tanakh or you embrace the New Testament, either or, the righteous remnant, you can't accept it. So let's say we take it from a Tanakh only perspective. Like I said, if I deal with Tanakh only Orthodox Jew, I put down the New Testament, right? Like I can't separate the righteous remnant from the Davidic Messiah, like the Davidic kingdom and all. Like you need both there. The Messiah comes and gathers the righteous remnant or whatnot, right? The Messianic figure comes and there's a gathering period of the righteous remnant. You have the Davidic king over them. So you can't have the Davidic kingdom with just the king by himself. There's got to be people in the kingdom, fam. He's not a one-man kingdom, fam. One thing that I would love to get a better understanding from Judah is as to why he rejects the Davidic claim in Isaiah 53, being that you can't separate the Davidic kingdom from the nation of Israel. But again, like there's never enough time to debate for him. Just understand that. Just understand that. Going into Judah's Q&A round, I thought he asked some interesting questions that I thought were very, very, very good, and I thought that a lot of Christians need to understand the nuance of these questions. Why is your God Jesus eating sin offerings prepared by Levitical priests in Ezekiel 44 if he is the perfect sacrifice? This is a question that Judah asked. Jesus, and this is the answer he got back. Jesus eats food after his resurrection. The Old Testament theophanies eat food. Jesus had to keep the law perfectly. I didn't study Ezekiel 44 for debate on Isaiah 53. Right? These are basically the answers that he was getting back from this question and whatnot. Right? I'm going to submit that none of those were good answers. I'm going to submit that none of those are good answers, particularly that last one. I didn't study Ezekiel 44 for debate on Isaiah 53, but you brought up Ezekiel 39 in your first question. So you both brought up Ezekiel in an Isaiah 53 debate as a modifier for what you had to say. And I agree that that's right and proper. You're going to see me bring up Ezekiel 37 here in a second, right? Not the dry bones part either. Like that's part of the whole thing, but there's another part that you're going to see me read Ezekiel 37 that's very important to all this, right? Judah asked another question: is Jesus Christ mentioned in the Old Testament by name? Joshua the Deliverer is the answer that he got from Vocab, and he says so Joshua was the Messiah. No, his name means Yahweh delivers. I think that there's an answer to be had to this question, and as somebody who accepts the New Testament, there's ways that I make this argument, right? But I think that this needs to also be understood to where, like, it's a legit question for somebody who's a Tanakh only, Torah only, Orthodox Jew, etc. That doesn't that the answers they get back for this question again aren't going to be really satisfactory for a lot of people, and I think there are better answers to give to this question. But again, going back to that first question, I think that this is a real big question that Christians need to slow down and understand that they can't speed through this question here, because Ezekiel 44, Ezekiel 45 is Ezekiel period is paramount. Like, so you got Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all paramount in Old Testament eschatology. So these are legitimate questions. So saying, oh, I just don't believe that there's going to be a temple, or at least, all right, cool. It sounds like you're erasing chapters of the Bible, though, for a lot of people. And so that needs to be understood, and that also needs to be explained. And people like me and Judah can hear you. I got no issue. Just want to hear the logic on the thing, right? Just want to hear the logic on the thing. Just like you would on a lot of things, right? So it's a two-way street on all this, right? Judah's final round, he brought up Ezekiel 45:22. The royal Messiah will be offering a sin offering in the future. Isaiah 53 can't be about a perfect sin sacrifice. I thought that was an interesting point that I would have loved. This was an interesting debate structure to where there wasn't a closing round. It was like a third rebuttal after the Q&A. I would have loved to have seen like an actual closing round after that, so we could have seen some more of these questions answered. Because I didn't like the fact that there was questions posed at the end that people couldn't get to. Unfortunately, it was just an odd structure to the debate. But you know, it is what it is. Live and learn. Psalm 73, he brought up. He said the nation's sins falls on the nations of Israel because they were given the Torah. The other nations weren't given anything. Again, that's something I need to understand better, and for the way Judah's teaching it, because I like to understand people's perspectives to the point where I could teach their perspectives, or I can properly give their understandings to what they're saying and whatnot. And this is one where I could not tell someone else Judah's perspective and feel comfortable that I'm doing it justice. So I would definitely love to get more clarity from Judah on this. Maybe you could do a show, Judah. Maybe I can hop on. Maybe you can talk as well. And if nothing else, maybe we could all sit down at a round table or whatnot. Vocab says he doesn't believe in a new temple. That means Isaiah has to go. And again, that's the point I'm saying. Like, so a lot of Christians need to understand, if you're going to make that point that there's no new temple, okay, there's a lot of language that you gotta throw away, or you have to at least explain why it's written, why it looks like there's a new temple, or why there's another temple at that time period. He says Isaiah 50:51 is about the Israelites getting their behind kicked voluntarily. I wish he could have got to explain that more. I think that'd have been beneficial for me and for other people watching. He says Ezekiel 37, the Valley of Dry Bones, is about resurrection of Israel, and not Jesus or the Christian church. I would really like to hear what Vocab and other Christians and what Radar Apologetics has to say about this concept, because I think it's a legitimate argument that deserves a legitimate answer or whatnot. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it deserves a legitimate answer. So again, another good reason for a sit down. For me, I give the debate a tie and say it was 50-50, being that they both asked the other side good questions that weren't given full answers in the debate. In terms of the Davidic, like the Isaiah 53:2, like why that doesn't have to do with the Messiah and whatnot. And let me explain it like this. Like, so the debates is the title of the debate is, does Isaiah 53 apply to Jesus? That was a specific title, right? So we're talking about a reasonable doubt debate, right? Like, so Judah gotta bring reasonable doubt to the fact that it's about Jesus, right? Vocab got to prove that it's Jesus, right? And so if Judah brings reasonable doubt, the only thing that Vocab can do is bring reasonable doubt to Judah's reasonable doubt. And I actually thought that he did that in one area, because I couldn't see where Judah's argument was with Isaiah 53:2 things, where like it can't have anything to do with the Messiah. I was stuck on that. Or the Davidic concept or Davidic kingdom, where I was stuck on that. Now, it doesn't mean that he's incorrect. It just means I didn't understand his argument, right? And this is just what I'm saying, right? However, I thought Judah asked fantastic questions that also did not get answered, right? Mainly having to do with the death and resurrection of Israel. Like that's a fantastic reasonable doubt. Judah did his job in raising reasonable doubt. Okay, what's up with this death and resurrection? You're saying it ain't there. What's up with this? What's up with Hosea? What's up with Ezekiel breaking down this death and resurrection concept? That equally fantastic, right? The question about the tent, like again, the question about the temple in Ezekiel 44 and 45, etc., all like everything he's asking about that concept, all having to wrapped up in the same concept. Like, okay, like this is part of that death, burial, and resurrection of Israel. Are you saying this happens or no? So that whole big question about like, does this apply? And you kept seeing it, like where Vocab had no real good answer for it. Like, I believe this is what it is. Like, okay, but answer why, fam. Answer why. So for me, I thought it was a tie because I thought they both asked good questions. That, and I'll say this as well, like the suffering, the taking on the suffering of the nations and whatnot. I need that one more thoroughly explained. That's me. Judah may have a very good answer for that he just wasn't able to give in the time that he was given, right? And this needs to be understood, fam. There's like not every answer is going to fit into a 5-minute round or a 10-minute round or whatever, right? There's some answers in this scroll that in the scrolls that take, bro, they're deep, man. And if the more you study with this stuff, the more you recognize, like, yeah, there is some heavy questions and heavy answers that do take a lot of information. It's not just going to be a 60-second blah 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 answer. No, there's a lot of nuance to a lot of these things, right? So wherein I understand an argument that can be made for Israel suffering for the iniquities of their fathers, I get that all day in terms of like the righteous remnant, etc. And you'll get it. You'll hear why I say that going forward when I get into my portion of this. However, I can't tell you Judah's argument from for why Israel bears the sins of the nations beyond the fact that they get the Torah. And so for me, there's a question mark there, right? So there's unanswered questions on both sides. So I believe that Judah did his job in raising reasonable doubt to the debate, to the concept of it being Jesus or whatnot. Like, so the concept, why doesn't this death, burial, and resurrection apply to the nation of Israel, right? When the text says so. Fantastic point. And I thought that Vocab did a good job in pushing back in terms of why certain things should apply to the Messiah and whatnot. Now, that being said, I'm going to give my thoughts in you know what? You've been hearing me do this the whole time. Let me go ahead and skip past this. You've been hearing me do this the whole time. So everything I say there, I said the whole time I hear. So I don't. There's no point in browbeating off the same points over and over again. So I'm going to get into my general thoughts on the whole thing, right? On the topic itself. So I'm going to take Judah out of it, take Vocab out of it. You're going to hear my perspective on this thing now, right? And why I think there's nuance here that's being missed because people are not slowing down enough on certain aspects of what people are saying. So first and foremost, like I said, I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. Although I do identify with West African and North African Hebrew cultures or whatnot, I am not a Hebrew Israelite. Please do not get that twisted. I do not support the awakening. I'm down with the awakening, right? The awakening, no matter how you slice it, is the righteous remnant coming in tune with the ways of the Messiah, etc. Right? And holding their Messiah up as a banner to the nations and whatnot, right? And a few other things to go along with that, right? It has nothing to do. Well, let me just do it like this: the awakening equals skin doctrine, spiritual hierarchy, and supremacy, right? I'm not with that in any way, shape, or form. So please don't misconstrue what I'm saying to have anything to do with these views. The awakening equals repentance, resurrection, and rebuilding. This is what I'm about. This is what I see in the scrolls in terms of what the righteous remnant get into, in terms of the righteous remnant of the nation of Israel and the Gentile nations and whatnot, right? But the awakening for the righteous remnant of the nation of Israel is all about repentance, resurrection, and rebuilding, no matter how you slice it in the scrolls. That's how I see it, right? So please don't misconstrue what I believe and what I'm about for the skin doctrine you see coming out of the camps and other BHIs and whatnot, right? And other Hebrew Israelite practitioners and whatnot, right? And shout out to Mr. Blacktastic for coming up with the term of faking and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? The faking versus the awakening all day. I take a middle position in that I believe that Isaiah 53 applies to both the Messiah and the righteous remnant of the nation of Israel. I believe that David, the future messianic figure, and Jacob, the nation of Israel, are both servants of God with future context within the text. David, my servant, Jacob, my servant. By speaking about the righteous remnant of Israel, I am not rejecting the fact that there will be a righteous remnant among the nations. However, my focus here is on the righteous remnant of Israel that are gathered from captivity and exile. Please hear this point. The righteous remnant of the nations weren't scattered. They were not scattered. So the gathering aspect is a huge aspect. The gathering from captivity and exile is a huge aspect of the eschatology from Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, etc., right? And other places, many other places. But in an Isaiah 53 debate, we're going to keep it about Isaiah for right now, right? And it's definitely a key concept in Isaiah. The nations are not scattered. Israel scattered to the nations. I'm a proponent of remnant theology. This is something that I coined and came up with. I studied the righteous remnant of the nation of Israel and the nations, their individual roles and responsibilities, and their joint labors as believers. Their joint labors as believers. I don't pick one or the other. This isn't a versus thing. This is understanding how things go together. I'm a messianic Karaite in my methodology. I make my arguments solely based on the text of the scriptures. And to be clear, I don't so Radar Apologetics seems like he might recognize a lot of the councils, what that was Nicaea, Chalcedon, all that type of stuff, etc. For me, I don't accept any of those councils. As a Karaite, I only recognize the Council of Jerusalem within the New Testament. That's the only council that I rock with, right? As a Messianic Karaite, just so we're clear on that one, right? I would argue that the Davidic Messiah as a servant is the greater servant, and that Jacob as the nation of Israel is the lesser servant of the two, right? But that they're both servants of God, again, with context, future context within the text, fam. The Davidic servant, this is why I said the Davidic servant is the greater of the servants or whatnot, right? The Davidic servant, the Messiah, is the king, and Jacob, the nation of Israel, are his subjects, right? We can see this in Ezekiel 37, 24, and 25. The Davidic servant, the Messiah, is held up as an ensign by Jacob, the nation of Israel, Isaiah 11:10. Jacob, the nation of Israel, mourns the one whom was pierced as one does for an only son. The Davidic, well, I'll just leave it like that. I'll just say it like that. Jacob, the nation of Israel, mourns the one who was pierced as one does for an only son, Zechariah 10:12, or 12:10, excuse me. Being that Vocab brought an argument from Ezekiel 39 and Judah brought an argument from Ezekiel 45, I would like to bring an argument from Ezekiel 37. It takes both the Davidic king, the Messiah, being the servant of God, and Jacob's righteous remnant, the nation of Israel, being the servant of God, to bring about the Messianic or the Davidic kingdom, right? Going through it, starting at 37:21. And saying to them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Verse 23, neither shall they defile themselves any more with the idols, nor with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. Verse 24, and David my servant shall be king over them, and they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob, my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. So you even see in Ezekiel 37 the concept where you can see David, my servant, and Jacob, my servant, existing side by side. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It does not have to be one or the other. Verse 26, moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them, and it shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. So again, I can go through this all day. 27, my tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Verse 28, and the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. So this language has to be explained in terms of to why it doesn't apply to a temple concept, particularly when you get into the rest of Ezekiel, where there's literally a temple being built, etc. So this is my Ezekiel argument. to go along with Judah's Ezekiel argument, and to go along with Vocab's Ezekiel argument, in the sense that you don't have to separate Jacob as my servant and David as my servant from the eschatology of the Old Testament, because you need both in the Messianic kingdom. You need both. Jeremiah 23:1. Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord. Verse 2. Therefore, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, concerning the shepherds who care for my people. You have scattered my flock and have driven them away, and you have not attended to them. Behold, I will attend to you for your evil deeds, declares the Lord. Verse 3. Then I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I have driven them, and I will bring them back to their fold, and they shall be fruitful and multiply. Verse 4. I will set my shepherds over them, plural. I will set my shepherds over them, who will care for them, and they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed. Neither shall any be missing, declares the Lord. Verse 5. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he shall reign as king, and deal wisely, and shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. Verse 6. In his days Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell securely. And this is the name by which he will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. Or Yahweh Sedeknu, right? The Lord is our righteousness. Watch this. Because you get the same, so you have the Davidic king, right? Being called, or like the name is applying to an individual as the Lord is our righteousness. Now watch this. The same language is applied to the nation of Israel. So you got the messianic figure, the Davidic king, and then also the nation of Israel having the same name applied to both. Jeremiah 33:14. Behold, the days come, said the Lord, that I will perform that good thing which I promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. Verse 15. In those days and at that time will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. Verse 16. In those days shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name wherein she shall be called, the Lord our righteousness. Talking about Jerusalem. The people, not the king. But they both got the same name, Yahweh Tzedek. Both got the same name. Same name. So people keep talking about the suffering servant. I like to point to this. I like to point to this concept. Who's the righteous servant? Who's the righteous servant? Verse 53:11, Isaiah 53:11. He shall see of the travail of his soul and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Now I'm going to say this name, like this concept, the righteous, my servant of righteousness, right? The Lord is our righteousness. These are connected concepts, obviously, right? But we see that it's one servant being called, my servant is righteousness, or excuse me, being called my righteous servant. But Jeremiah is letting you know that two servants can have the same name. So I argue, how do you know that Isaiah 53 isn't talking about both servants? Particularly when you have language like this, and I really want Christians to see this. I really want, please, this is a slow down, nuance moment right now. Yeah. So in Isaiah 53:11, you get this language. He shall see of the travail of his soul and shall be satisfied by his knowledge. Shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Lamentations 5:7. Our fathers have sinned and are not, and we have borne their iniquities. Same exact language in the Hebrew, fam. Same. So the language, so this is where Judah is going to ask the question, or where he would rightfully ask the question, where does this language apply to another figure, right? Because you can easily point to the fact that this language applies to the nation of Israel, right? So So for somebody who deals with the New Testament, or someone who's a Christian, etc., whatnot, right? This is where again I'm saying you got to slow down right here, because you're doing a lot of hand waving for people they're like, okay, we see a death, burial, and resurrection concept being raised on the third day that applies to the nation. We see this bearing of the iniquities of their fathers and whatnot happening to one of the, like Jacob, my servant, and whatnot. So, but you can't show me this applying to the messianic figure you're talking about. Why are you telling me to throw away my tradition and just accept your stuff out of hand or whatnot? This is where we need to slow down and have a very nuanced conversation. Very, very nuanced conversation. And I hope that Christians can see the need for it when seeing stuff like this. Because I can go into the Hebrew, like Vocab was asking Judah for a timeline on Isaiah 53. Now, something that I got is like where I'm going through Isaiah 53 verse for verse and showing where like via the Hebrew thereof to where it applies to the characters I'm talking about, right? This is just one case. This is just one aspect of it. I'm talking. You should be able to go from beginning to end and be able to make your point. But again, these are the verses that Judah brought out, the concept that he brought out that again, there's language that applies to both the nation of Israel and the Messiah, and then there's ways that it's separate at the same point in time. And this is why I give a both argument, right? Now, you may not agree with the both argument. That's not an issue, right? What I'm saying is we should sit down and have a really slow conversation via the text, just to at the very least understand the arguments everyone's making. Because I don't think everyone understands the arguments. I really don't. I really, really don't. But again, Hosea 6:1, come and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn and he will heal us, right? So this is something that Judah brought out in terms of like Vocab was asking, like, well, how can Israel heal if they're sick? Well, there's a point in time where in the future, as a nation, they get healed. He has smitten and he will blind us. So they're stricken by God and healed by God. Verse 2, after 2 days will he revive us. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. You can't ignore that language or that imagery, particularly if you're a Christian. You know you can. And so this is why, if you don't slow down and have a nuanced conversation, you're going to be guilty of special pleading, because you're going to say, oh, this is Jesus, but it has nothing to do with Israel. No, you can't. Like, we're not having a scholastic conversation at that juncture. Like like you're trying to indoctrinate me, right? I don't want to indoctrinate you. I don't want to indoctrinate me. I want to have conversations based on good faith. I might be wrong. You might be right, and vice versa. But if you're right, we should be able to have the conversation based upon good faith and have a slow and nuanced conversation. The Ezekiel 37 language. Again, verse 4. Again, he said unto me, prophesy unto these bones, and saying to them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Verse 5, thus saith the Lord, go unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live. Verse 6, and I will lay sinews upon you, and you will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. This language is clearly there for Ezekiel, or for the nation of Israel, right? Clearly there. But what also needs to be recognized, and this is where I'm going to go on the flip with this. This is where I think that the Christians have solid arguments with the Tanakh only and the Orthodox Jews, to where there needs to be a nuanced conversation going back in their direction about this type of stuff, in terms of like Psalm 22 applying to an individual and not the nation, right? I would argue that there's different manners of death talked about, and there's different manners of resurrection talked about, right? There's something that the messianic figure goes through, and there's something that the nation goes through. I make that argument, right? Again, I could be wrong. So could you. But we won't know unless we have a good faith conversation on the matter, right? So Psalm 21, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? again, language that we see echoed from Christ on the cross and whatnot, right, in the New Testament. This is exactly where a Christian is going to bring the argument. 22:14, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax; it is melted in the midst of my bowels. You're seeing a lot of language in Psalm 22 that again reflects the crucifixion. And what's crazy is during the crucifixion, you have Jesus reciting Psalm 22 from the cross, in a very specific manner of death. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. This is a situation in the New Testament where before Jesus gets stabbed with the spear, he's already given up the ghost. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit to give up the ghost. It's a different. It's not a manner of death that the imagery in Psalm 22 is not something you see applied to the nation of Israel anywhere else in the text, right? And this is where a Christian has an argument that I think that Tanakh only and Torah only and Orthodox Jews need to slow down as well, right? What's interesting about this deliver my soul from the sword concept is also this aspect here, where most Christians are going to bring out Zechariah 12:10, and I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplication, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. So let's say you take this from the Tovia Singer concept, right? To where it's not they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. It's they shall look upon him who was pierced, like I think because of me or something of that nature, right? Even if you take it from that perspective, they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son. There's an individual there being talked about, right? No matter how you slice it, from the Tovia Singer way, they're so Tovia talks about it as being likening it to Josiah, I believe, or whatnot. He likens it to a figure, a messianic figure, a kingly figure who dies in war or whatnot. And he believes in the future that there's going to be a messianic figure, or there's going to be a figure that dies that the nation mourns or whatnot, right? That's an argument. I'm not mad at that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not mad at that. But I do believe this is a situation to where, at the very least, someone who's Tanakh only, Torah only, or an Orthodox Jew has to recognize that this mourning as a nation for this individual is something that applies to the nation of Israel or whatnot. Yes, you see the house of David and the Jerusalem and the inhabitants of Jerusalem and whatnot, right? But it does not say like you see the kingly figure of like. So there's a lot of nuance to be had in that conversation. Like why is the Davidic figure not mentioned here but mentioned in other places, but his house is mentioned, etc. Right? Why is it an individual who's pierced being mourned, etc. by the nation, etc. Right? I definitely don't think you can make someone might make the argument that Israel's mourning themselves as a nation, as an individual. If I'm welcome to hear that argument, right? It's not something I see, but I could be wrong, right? I'm someone who believes that Psalm 22 and Zechariah 10 or 12:10 are decent footing for an argument to be made. It doesn't make someone 100% correct, right? I'm saying it's a place that you can it's an environment where you can make an argument. I'll say it like that. And this is something that I definitely want to get into and leave it here. I appreciate y'all for sticking with me this long and whatnot. There's this concept that a lot of Christians have in a modern time that the Levitical, like the Levites, are done and gone away with. And this is also a situation to where a lot of Old Testament believers, a lot of Orthodox Jews, a lot of Tanakh Torahs, etc., they're going to have an issue with this concept, being that, again, just like you have like the gathering language or whatnot, you have this language of the priests and whatnot being and the Zadokim, like that Judah brought out, being recognized and reinstituted, etc. Right. So just quickly, I give the perspective that it's not a one versus the other concept either. It's a both and thing, right? And I recognize I have a unique perspective on this and no issue with that, but I would love to go through the text with people to prove the truth, right? Let God be true and every man be a liar. Right? So Psalm 110:4, the Lord has sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after you go to Melchizedek. This is something applying to David and whatnot, right? 100%, right? Isaiah 66, and having to do with Isaiah conversation, right? Isaiah 66:21, and I will also take of them for priests and for Levites, saith the Lord, right? So this is in that eschatology concept, right? Also of the Old Testament. Also in that Old Testament eschatology concept, we have this, Jeremiah 33:22, as the host of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so will I multiply the seed of David my servant, and the Levites that minister unto me. Now that Jeremiah 33, that argument can also be someone like Judah is going to use that for like the servant increasing their seed, or he shall see his seed and all that kind of stuff, right? But either or, no matter if you agree with the argument or not, you can't run from the fact that it's mentioning in an eschatological format that you have an increasing of David, the seed of David, and the Levites that minister unto you, that minister unto God or whatnot. You can't run from that concept. So there needs to be a really slow conversation about this here. A really slow conversation. Because I hear a lot of people run into the book of Hebrews and thinking that they're making certain arguments that are obvious, but when you compare the text and whatnot, and you really slow things down, you can see why. You'll clearly be able to see why people from a Torah only, Tanakh only, Orthodox Jewish perspective take issue with a lot of arguments that Christians make from the book of Hebrews or whatnot. I'm a New Testament believer, and I make different arguments for the book of Hebrews. That being said, it is my position that the Davidic Messiah will be prophet, Melchizedek, priest, and king over the Levites, whom are chosen and purified as a part of the righteous remnant of the nation of Israel, just as King David and the Levites of his day also coexisted. There's precedence for this concept. A lot of Christians are going to disagree with this concept, but this is where a lot of people are going to want an understanding of, like, so where do you see in the Old Testament that the Levites are done away with? Particularly when they existed along with King David, who is, again, a Melchizedek priest via the language of the literature. I would love to have a respectful roundtable dialogue with Vocab Malone, Rabbi Eduardo, and Judah Natzarah, where we can discuss Isaiah 53 in depth and also discuss the future priesthood of Israel. What happens to the Levites in everybody's traditions? I'm somebody who believes they get brought underneath the Melchizedek priesthood. That's me, right? That's me. And I believe that looks a certain way, walks a certain way, talks a certain way. A lot to get into with that. Not everybody agrees with that concept. I think that there would a lot of people would benefit from a slow down, nuanced conversation. And again, Vocab knows I can have those. He knows I moderated those all day on Debate Talk for You. Vocab and I can definitely have, like, and you've seen it where me, him, and Judah both gone on his channel. Like, Judah's gone on his channel, I've gone on his channel. We can all sit down and talk. Radar's gone on his channel, been able to talk. Now I saw Judah in Rabbi Eduardo / Radar apologetics going back and forth on Radar's channel, but I do think that if we all sat down, it would be cool. Particularly knowing that I bet you I know me and Vocab will keep things straight. And let's see here. Where am I at? My last one for this one. I am. So, this being said, there's one small thing I'm going to get into real quick and end it all here, which is going through some stuff from the book of Isaiah, right? being that there was an Isaiah 53 debate. And there's something that I want Christians to kind of like have a make sure that they're clear on seeing when in terms of certain arguments. Like I said, I'm a proponent of something I call remnant theology, and something that I talk quite a bit about is the light of the rising of Israel and Israel being made a covenant for the people. That was one of the questions that I asked, or something I brought up to Vocab in terms of, it says twice in Isaiah that the nation of Israel is made a covenant for the people. And it's like, well, you should know how a Christian answers that. I don't know how you answer that. I would love to know how you answer that Vocab. And again, another reason to sit down and dialogue and whatnot. But that being said, I say the same narrative is reinforced throughout the book of Isaiah. At the beginning of Isaiah, Israel is a sick and profane nation. By the end of Isaiah, the nation of Israel is healed and made righteous. Israel is tasked with doing certain things so that the nations will be drawn to the light of their rising. Now, I'm going to walk you through some stuff in the book of Isaiah and match it up to some at the end to some stuff in Revelation. This is why I really want a slowed down conversation, because even if you take it from a New Testament perspective, there's reasons to slow this thing down. There's reasons to slow this thing down. What is the light of Israel's rising? And I'm going to say that there's a couple different lights, just to be clear, but there's something I'm going to talk about in particular. Isaiah 11:11. In that day, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people from Assyria, from Egypt. And this is all from the ESV. This, like most of the stuff I was doing earlier, was from the KJV. All this here, this is for the ESV because I know that the Vocab likes the ESV. And just do it like that. In that day, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastlands of the sea. Verse 12. He will raise a signal for the nations and will assemble the banished of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So again, there's this gathered remnant. I, the Lord, have 42:6. And this is an important concept, right? I, the Lord, have called thee in righteousness and will hold thine hand and will keep thee and give thee for a covenant of the people, for a light of the Gentiles. So the people are made a covenant of the people. So like the people of Israel, the nation of Israel, like these gathered people are made a covenant of the people for a light of the Gentiles. That's 46:2. 49:8. Thus saith the Lord, in an acceptable time have I heard thee, and in a day of salvation have I helped thee, and I will preserve thee and give thee for a covenant of the people, to establish the earth, to cause thee to inherit the desolate heritages. Right. Again, a second time, these people are being called a covenant for the people, or covenant of the people. I would love to have this under, like, again, I somewhat think I understand where Vocab's coming from on this, because I understand his. I've done a lot of study on his background, his belief system and progressive covenantalism, his particular theology. However, I would like to understand his particular answer here and concept here in terms of what he believes, how this does not apply to the nation of Israel. 49:9, saying to the prisoners, come out to those who are in darkness, appear, they shall feed along the ways, on all bare heights shall be their pasture. Right? So they're coming out of darkness again, right? Isaiah 51:4, give attention to me, my people, and give ear to me, my nation. For a law will go out from me, and I will set my justice for a light to the peoples. There's this consistent theme of light throughout Isaiah that needs to be clearly understood, because there's a couple different ones. This is one of them. Isaiah 58:6. This is one that I really want all the Israelites listening to, all the Orthodox Jews to listen to, or that listen to please slowly go through this part. Isaiah 58:6. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the straps of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. Verse 7. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh. Verse 8. Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. There's the health aspect, or the healing aspect that Judah was talking about from Hosea. It's also in Isaiah. So when Vocab's talking about like how can they heal when they're sick, they also get healed, fam. The nation also gets healed, and your healing shall spring. And this is how they get healed. So a lot of Israelites are acting like, and I'll say this: a lot of Orthodox Jews are acting like there's nothing they have to do in order for this stuff to happen, right? No. There's responsibilities in this. There's principles in this thing. There's principalities in this smoke. Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. 58:10. If you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness, and your gloom be as the noonday. Isaiah 61. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. Verse 3. And nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Verse 6. A multitude of camels shall cover you. The young camels of Midian in Ephah, and those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall bring good news, the praises of the Lord. Verse 7. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered to you. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister to you. They shall come up with acceptance on mine altar, and I will beautify my beautiful house. So this is, again, language about other people helping to come through and help rebuild a house of God, right? So that this language also has to be answered as to why there's no new temple, etc., etc., etc. Verse 19. And this is where it starts to get interesting as well. The sun shall be no more your light by day, nor for brightness shall the moon give you light. But the Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. Now, this should set off bells for anybody who's a New Testament believer in any way, shape, or form, because you see this language in the book of Revelation within the New Jerusalem concept. 100%. Again, the sun shall be no more your light by day, nor for brightness shall the moon give you light, but the Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. So there's two lights that you see in Isaiah. You have the light coming from the nation of Israel, and the light coming from the Lord. His glory, his law, all that coming from him. So the light coming from the nation of Israel, the light coming from the Lord. 66:19. And I will set a sign among them, and from them I will send survivors to the nations, to Tarshish, Pool, and Lud, who draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the coastlands far away, that have not heard my fame or seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the nations. Verse 20. This is what I was asking. This is what I asked Rabbi Eduardo in Vocab. And they shall bring all your brothers from all the nations as an offering to the Lord, on horses and chariots, and in litters, and on mules and on dromedaries, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, says the Lord, just as the Israelites bring their grain offering in a clean vessel to the house of the Lord. So all this is part of the eschatology. When I asked, did this happen yet? No, not via the eschatology of the Old Testament, no. And not if you believe the eschatology of the New Testament. Because again, like I gotta go back to get to the light concept. I gotta go in Isaiah 60. I'm already at this whole New Jerusalem concept. So we're at a problem if Isaiah 66 is happening already. Like we're saying that this part of the New Jerusalem part of Revelation's already happened. That can't be the case, man. That's obviously not the case. So again, Revelation 7:4. And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. Verse 9, after this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands. Therefore they are before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple. So even in Revelation, there's a temple structure concept, or there's a temple concept, and people serving him, consistent with what we see in Isaiah. And he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. This is 7:16. 21:23. And the city has no need for sun or moon. I might have missed one. Hold on. Because this language here is in, just to be clear, this language here is in the book of Isaiah. And I'll pull this up in a second if I don't have it here. But this language right here is in the book of Isaiah. So there's going to be a couple of direct verses from Isaiah that you see in Revelation. And the city has no need for, again, we read this part here in Isaiah, and the city has no need for sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and its lamp is the Lamb. Same concept in Isaiah 21:24. By its light will the nations walk. By its light will the nations walk, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Same thing that we see in Isaiah is the kings of the earth are bringing their glory into the nation, into this nation. And night will be no more. They will need no light or lamp of sun, for the Lord God will be their light. Same thing we see in Isaiah, and they will reign forever and ever. Same. Same. Hold on. So there's plenty of reasons for us to have a dialogue and slow things down, and plenty of reasons for us to not talk past each other on certain points, because there's a lot of good points being made on all sides. And again, I sincerely am reaching out to Vocab Malone, Rabbi Eduardo, Judah Natzarah, and Judah Natzarah, so we can sit down and have a conversation about this, because I think there's a lot of ground that can be covered and made in said conversation, for sincere people on all sides. But that being said, family, I truly appreciate you for coming through. I appreciate any comments you have. I appreciate any critiques you have. Trust me, I know it's with the critiques and whatnot. Please like, share, and subscribe. Go subscribe to Vocab Malone. Go subscribe to Radar Apologetics. Go subscribe to Judah Natzarah. Go subscribe to the Gospel Truth. All good platforms and whatnot. Different people will like different things about the platforms and whatnot, but for different, there's different perspectives you can definitely take from the platforms and whatnot. At least learn something. You don't have to agree with everybody to learn from it. But with that being said, I say peace and